Good evening, everybody. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the South Haven City Council. It's Monday, March the 7th, 2022. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Invocation. Let's start with Pastor Travis Wilson of the Peace Lutheran Church. Good evening, Travis. Thank you for being here as always.
Indeed, thank you all. Let me offer a prayer. Dear God, we thank you for this night. We thank you for this opportunity to gather in this city that we call home. I ask your blessings upon the agenda as we move through all these items. I pray that you would be in the midst of those who speak and those who will make decisions. Bless our city council people, bless our city staff, and direct us as you would have us to go. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you again for coming tonight. Now if you join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, roll call. Megan.
Jeff Arnold.
Here.
Wendy O'Nucky.
Here.
Joe Reeser. Steve Schlack.
Here.
George Sleeper.
Here.
Letitia Wilkins.
Here.
Scott Smith.
Here.
I make a motion to excuse Joe Reeser.
I'll second.
Motion and a second to excuse Councilmember Reeser. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. He's excused. That takes us to the approval of the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion on the agenda as it's prepared? Looks good. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. It is approved. Next, we're going to get an update from our Van Buren County Commissioner, Ms. Gail Patterson-Gladney. And good evening, Gail. Happy March.
Same to you. Thank you. Thank you for your time. I just want to mention, sorry. I should have brought water. I'm going to be hosting.
We got extra.
Get extra.
Oh, thank you. I need a whole host of people. I'm just sitting here. I'm going to be hosting an event, and it's the Van Buren County Veterans Services Benefits and Services Coffee Briefing. It's going to be held at Senior Services on Wednesday, March 9th, at 8337 M140 Highway, and that's the Old Village Market location. It's from 7 to 9 in the morning, and if you know any veterans, please invite them to come. This is on your city manager's page, so she has all that information. One of the things is a lot of seniors don't know what's available to them, the veterans especially. This is going to be run by David Krinsky. He's the Veterans Services Department Director. He's going to talk about enrollment to the VA, claims, aid and attendance, taxes, pensions, relief, DD 214s, services, and ESA program. And that's the emotional support animals program that they have for veterans. So please share that information. And I think you have a flyer too? Okay. All right. There was one resident who was not going to be able to attend, but the different Van Buren County commissioners are hosting the events, and I know there's going to be one in Bangor. So Kurt Dorrell is going to plan that, so you can have people keep their eyes open for that one. It's going to be in the city of Bangor. The Rural Broadband Inventory Survey by DCS Technology has been approved for parcel level detail countywide. And the cost for the survey is $96,000, but the county commission feels that we're going to get really detailed maps, and that's going to help us with the whole plan. I brought some paperwork. I don't know if you saw that from DCS. And it has the objectives for the survey, so you can pass those out to your city council members. We, as the county, we are considering selling the vacant county property formerly occupied by Public Health in Mattawan. And so that's one of the things that we're working on. And then MDOT grant was approved for $826,470 for public transit. And the county is still taking proposals for the ARPA funds. We are unfortunately approving a lot, but it's good that we're approving a lot of ARPA fund requests, but $17 million goes quickly. So if you have any other requests, please send those in to Frank Hardister, our county administrator. Do you have any questions?
Questions, anybody?
Is the Vets Coffee only available for senior veterans, or is it open for anybody?
Oh, it's open for any veteran.
Okay,
It just happens to be at senior
gotcha.
services.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Gail. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And next, we're going to get an update from our Shays Director, Mr. Brandon Hids. Good evening, Brandon.
Good evening, council members, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for letting me stop by tonight on behalf of Shays and touch a base on some of the highlights from this past year. As you all know, 2021 had its fair share of challenges with COVID. I hope we're past it, at least past the pandemic period anyway, and none of us have to utter that word again. A few challenges we did have to deal with were increased on our end. Were increased wearing of PPEs, N95 masks, gowns, etc., and increased risk to our personnel, of course. Even with all the risks, all the exposures, out of our 16 full-time staff, we only had 3 that 13 would have been a little. We only had 3 that contacted COVID, 2 of our paid on-call members. I was very thankful for that extremely low number, especially with exposure every shift. Our department is like a family, which is great, but it lends itself to its own set of problems. For instance, our staff members work 24-hour shifts. And if there are 2 members on duty and they go on a call, 2 off-duty members get called back to cover their shift. Those duty members come back, we catch up, we share the same bedrooms, the same common rooms, the same dishes. So we had our fair share of challenges, but through diligence and disinfection and trying to distance as much as we could, we were able to pull through, thankfully. On to better and brighter notes, we were fortunate enough to achieve the following in 2021. We purchased 18 new dual-band radios to improve communications with police, another step towards better communications for water-related rescues. We currently operate off a VHF frequency in the county. The police operate off a 800 digital frequency, and these radios would let us talk back and forth a lot easier than we are able to now. We were able to purchase additional water safety equipment, an Aqua Eye underwater sonar device, life jackets, a drone capable of deploying a flotation tube. All our members took a DNR boater safety course. All of these were possible by generous grants from our community. Matthew Day, one of our firefighters, received the Firefighter of the Year award. Our firefighter paramedic Johanna Quinn and Allegan County Sheriff's Department Deputy Jacob Gage were both presented life-saving awards. Amanda Quinn, one of our paid-on-call firefighter paramedics, was promoted to full-time status. We took delivery on our new rescue truck manufactured by Spencer's right here in town. And we added new dive team members as well as additional fire instructors to our roster, all to better ourselves and perform for our communities. Shays responded to 2,594 calls in 2021. 1,100 of those incidents occurred in the city. 791 of those incidents were EMS and 309 were fire. The fire number seems large, but that number encompasses a bunch of different services that we provide. There's 32 different subcategories listed by NFPA. Lift assists for the elderly, rescues, spills, accidents, things like that. We did respond to 8 structure fires and 3 car fires in the city this last year, but the rest of those numbers were mostly, the rest of the remaining numbers were mostly for lift assists and spills in the city. And we only responded to 3 water rescue dispatches, all false alarms, thankfully. Our incidents that resulted in fire loss and damage was minimal in 2021 in the city. Only $65,000 in loss, protecting $1,500,000 worth of property. Another proud point of ours is the response time for South Haven City still remains exemplary, with an average response time for fire apparatus of 3 minutes and 46 seconds and EMS for 3 minutes and 30 seconds. Especially considering the factors to average those times out, back-to-back calls, back-to-back-to-back calls, which we've been experiencing as well frequently, road conditions, etc. Of course, a majority of our dispatches in the city are EMS, 791 incidents total. All of our shift members are firefighter paramedics, with 2 paramedics per ambulance, a perk we are very fortunate to have. We transport primarily to Bronson, South Haven, with critical or trauma patients being transported to our large and our regional hospitals if the care that isn't provided at South Haven it needs to be sought elsewhere. Cardiac issues, strokes, childbirth, and orthopedics, things like that. We increased our training hours this past year, logging nearly 4,000 training hours for the department as a whole in a multitude of different areas. With a 19% increase in incidents over the last 5 years, it can be difficult at times, especially to perform on-shift duty or on-duty shift training, but our crews have been getting it knocked out. There are some other statistics and numbers you may find of interest in the report that was in the meeting packet. I also have hard copies if anybody wanted any additional. I know Kate had also passed some out. Fridays are our busiest days, followed by Tuesdays. I don't know why Tuesdays are such a busy day, but they just seem to be. And June and July continue to be our busiest months, and with most of the incidents occurring a majority of the incidents occurring between 3 p.m. and 11 p.m. Our behind-the-scenes crew of our deputy chief and inspectors have made nearly 1,000 contacts this last year with businesses and residents, performing a multitude of tasks, including fire pre-plan inspections, code inspections, short-term rental inspections, Knox box repairs, and hydrant flow tests. I refer to them as behind the scenes because it's not a glamorous job or position, but they are directly related to our low fire loss and low life loss. As you all know, last year we were ecstatic to respond to only the 3 false alarms on Lake Michigan. I feel the increased management and education that we did last year had a huge part to do with that. Again, thank you for the opportunity to let me come down and give you a brief rundown of what we've been up to. I'm beyond proud of our organization. I'm truly honored to be a member of this organization. And we got a lot of dedicated men and women that keep our wheels turning. So, answer any questions?
Any questions? I'll just say thanks to you, thanks to your staff. Investment in fire services is always a top priority, and it's always impressive when I'm out there and in the comfort sitting down, and all of a sudden off goes the alarm and out go the men and women of your department, and always happy when they often return smiling, either didn't need or whatever, but it's just great. You have a great staff, and you truly are like family out there. I will say you've got a real good crew. So
We do. We're very
so I
fortunate.
sleep better every night because you're working hard and you guys are risking your tail for us. So thank you for what you do for this community as a whole. So thank you.
I do have a question, sorry.
Yeah.
I just thought of it. When you break down the budget information and the funding sources for that, I was just wondering how you determine the percentages of those.
Our percentages are determined by population and taxable value. Since we cover South Haven City, South Haven Township, Geneva, and Casco, we take our budget number and then it gets split up between the 4 different entities, and property value comes into play and population comes into play. We also receive a Van Buren County ambulance tax, which also gets credited to the different entities as well.
Okay, thank you. And then can I ask one more thing? I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
When you were talking about water safety and having, basically 0 drownings last year, and crediting that to education, are there any things that you plan to do this year to even further that?
Going forward, we're definitely going to keep up with the Nixle. I think that was an awesome idea that the South Haven IT department handled, and that's I think it made a huge difference. And mostly we wanted to inform visitors maybe that were out of town that would usually visit, and if we sent the alert out, hey, there's a red flag today, they might, you know what, we'll just stay home today, And I think that was a big piece, and as far as educating and handing out pamphlets, and we had some real dedicated flag personnel this last year, and we have a couple other ideas we'd like to implement this next year, and along the education piece and trying to keep everybody informed.
Okay, thank you so much.
And you're ramping up for peer barriers or ramping up for increased enforcement now that we have the ability to find folks that are in on those red flag days. I know Bronson's working on trying to get those loaner boards for life
Yes.
jackets, so
Yes, yep.
one of the things that are going on, so good stuff. And again, just be diligent, be smart, and keep telling folks that red means danger. Stay out. So thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. We are now at the consent agenda, items A through F.
I'll make a motion to approve consent agenda items A through F.
I'll second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Is there any discussion on those items? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote, please.
Arnold,
Yes.
Onuki,
Yes.
Schlack,
Yes.
Sleeper,
Yes.
Wilkins,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes, approved, thank you. Old business. City Council will be asked to consider the following actions regarding the planned unit development application for the Overton site. We'll put these together. We will consider a motion to introduce the PUD application for the Overton site and set a public hearing on the proposed PUD application to occur on Monday, March the 21st, 2022 at 7 p.m. in council chambers at City Hall. Again, this is an introduction.
I'll make a motion to introduce the PUD application for the Overton site and set a public hearing on the proposed PUD application to occur on Monday, March 21st, 2022 at 7 p.m. in City Council chambers at City Hall.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion. We've got a second. Where do we start? Who wants it?
Well, thank you, Mayor. We have here before you tonight the first the introduction, so the first reading of the plan unit application. Here tonight is Jeff Head from Habitat, as well as I believe his team. He's got a number of his team here tonight, plus a presentation that we have available. They have some items over there, some slides, I guess you could say. And we're here tonight because this is, again, a motion to introduce that's kind of revived from our February 21. There's a number of items that have been placed in the packet. Additionally, from Habitat, they have a letter explaining why they're here tonight. City staff did let them know the concerns that were brought up at the February 21st meeting, and the letter, and as well as the team, are here to answer any questions council has on those. So with that, I do know they have they have some presentations and some information to impart with for council. So at this point, I would like to turn it over to Habitat.
Okay. So we'll do a Habitat presentation. Our environmental consultant, where are they going to?
Our environmental consultant, Jeff Hawkins, is here as well.
I saw him out there. I just didn't know where you wanted to plug that
I
in.
think we have some people who are kind of hanging out in the hallway, so we'll make sure that everyone is using their microphone so it can be clearly heard by everyone, as well as those participating or watching at home, rather watching, not participating from home.
Okay. So let's start with our Habitat presentation, and we do that, and then let's go from there. Good evening, and thanks for coming.
Thank you, Kate, Mayor, council members. Nice to see you all again. I've got several people from our team, as Kate mentioned, that have joined me today to answer any sort of technical questions that have come up or sort of to reaffirm some of the items that were in the letter that I prepared. And do you want to join me? I want to walk through that. Maybe you could talk through a couple of things on a couple of the slides. And thank you for putting up the presentation. So what I've done is I've put together a presentation that, I think many people here have seen several pieces of it, but it tried to make it direct primarily towards the questions that were raised at the last meeting, but also to provide a little bit of overview of what we're specifically asking for with respect to the PUD and the associated waivers, and to provide a little bit of an overview for people who have not seen the proposed plan for the new affordable housing program on the Elkinburg site. So if that works for everybody, we'll get started. Okay, do you have the clicker?
We don't, but Griffin here can advance the
Okay,
slides as you
we've
need.
got Griffin.
Great.
All right. So, again, we have our team here. Pat Saldana-Natke from Urban Works is our...
Hi.
So I can stay on the record. Is the lead architect for the development. IVNA architects have also worked on this, and J.B. Dennison. And John is here from J.B. Dennison. We have Clement Adu from Netterveld, who was our civil engineer. And then in the hall, we have Sean Shadley, who represents ASI, the environmental consultant. And so we'll probably ask them to come up for a minute or two at various points in the presentation, but primarily they're here to answer your questions. They didn't come with big prepared presentations as much as I wanted them on hand, since questions came up and we weren't able to address them last time. Next slide, please. So just to, again, for the folks who haven't been here before, and as a refresher to the council, these are just some vision images for what we see as kind of an entry, and what might look like with the new development that we're tentatively calling Sohaven. Next slide. Another similar, these are just the street frontage along Elkinburg and what the primary entrance to the building would look like. Next slide. And I think, Kent, why don't you talk a little bit about kind of the background? We've talked a lot in various meetings about the outreach we did as a means of starting the project and trying to get input from a community broader than just us. We didn't want to implement just our ideas, but we wanted to hear from the larger community. So you can talk through that.
Correct. Great. And thank you. So we did a very extensive outreach where we made phone calls, we had Zoom meetings. We also, in addition to the meetings that we've had here, and this just gives you a little bit of a snapshot of who we interviewed, not only citizens, but the Ward 1 Committee Action Committee members, the Overton Evaluation Committee members, local ministers, some factory loft residents. We made the outreach and then received email responses and set different times at everyone's convenient schedule. Not only did we ask a few questions, but we documented all of the responses. The first board that's shown there highlights in teal the topics of, if you could go to the next, topic of concern. Yellow were the discussions that we felt really brought to the forefront things we could do with space and planning. So not only is our office, we're architects, but we're also urban planners. And the things that were brought up were in yellow, and how we address them in the master plan are in the orange. So we met as many as we could, looking at all of the comments, but really looking at which were the overlap comments and which were the most recurring comments.
So we've made several trips to South Haven, and we're glad to be here again tonight. But I just wanted to do a quick run through. I mean, I'm not going to, everybody can read them on their own, but I think that by my count, we're about our 10th public meeting on this topic, and we've learned something in all of them. I highlighted the two city council meetings that previously occurred where we presented the plan in detail and received endorsements of the plan. With the first meeting in June, the project concept was approved. The second meeting, we incorporated the concept into the redevelopment agreement with the city, and the redevelopment agreement was approved. And then we went to the Plan Commission, and I think that the story there is known. And so we could go to the next slide. So I wanted to, as I said, address some of the items that came up in public comment at the last meeting. And I put together some slides that try to speak as directly as possible to the specific comments. And so there seemed to be concern that Habitat, the development, was not aware of or intending to deal with soils issues on the Overton site. And I just wanted to be clear that our eyes have been wide open about what the expected soil condition is at Overton. We've seen the prior phase ones and studies, and we are obligated both through the process that we intend to go through to finance these developments through MSHDA, and also obligated by the redevelopment agreement that we've executed with the city, which the council has approved, to ensure that appropriate studies, surveys, sampling, and remediation takes place to make the site safe and occupiable with a long-term due care plan that we would be responsible for maintaining. I just highlighted the specific language from the redevelopment agreement because I think it's important. This really highlights not just that we've intended to do it, but this has been an open discussion with staff, with legal counsel, as to what our shared expectation is for addressing any soils contaminations on the sites that we develop. And so I just highlighted it. No certificates of occupancies will be issued for any building in the project until Habitat provides sufficient documentation from Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, we know as EGLE, confirming that the child parcel on which the building is located has been remediated in accordance with EGLE's requirements. And so I just want to make sure that everybody, that's a baseline, our expectation, your expectation. The way that we do that is when we don't do it before we have funding for the project because it's an expensive process. But when we're applying to MSHDA, as you know, and we're hopeful that we're going to get tax credits subsequent to our application at the beginning of April. We would expect to learn that in June. If we get those credits, then we will begin an investigations process. And if you'd like, I'd be happy to have Sean Shadley come up and talk a little bit about what that looks like, or I can describe it. I defer to the council's wishes on that.
Whoever you want to describe it works for me. If you want to,
Sean, why don't you just join me for a second?
Yeah, that's by far one of the top issues we're dealing with here. So it'd be good to understand.
Can you just give a little quick run through of phase one, phase two, and remediation?
Sure. So
Thank you.
I've reviewed the prior reports, and I'm sorry. I've reviewed the prior reports, and most of the contamination is a direct contact concern. As Jeff indicated, we will definitely need to do additional sampling, not only to satisfy MSHDA, but EGLE. Everything that we do will have to go to the state and get approval before MSHDA will sign off and release the 8609. It may require we take soils off-site. It may require that we add soils to the site. We may need to put a vapor barrier within the building so that there's not a vapor intrusion concern. The work that's been done is decent, but not great. And as I prepared Jeff, we're definitely going to need to do more sampling to get EGLE satisfied with what we're going to do moving forward.
Any questions on that?
Could you talk about remediation in phases. There's a lot of concern. Some folks would like to see it all remediated at once. Some people, I think the plan is to do it in phases. Could you talk us through that process?
Sure. Remediation isn't always the answer. Here in Michigan with the BEA and the Due Care Plan, a lot of times we can mitigate exposures through, like I said, pavement, barriers of some sort. In this case, the development, as far as its submittal to MSHDA, will be specifically to Phase 1. And so that is basically the southeast corner of that property. As an owner of a contaminated property, the developer will still have to address due care with the remaining piece of that property. So it may include fencing to limit access from a third party. We haven't talked enough about if we're going to do any remediation on the remainder of the parcel, assuming tax credits are awarded, like Jeff said, like in June.
So I think that the question, if I can maybe rephrase the question as I understand it, and I've heard it in other places, I would say, is it a common scenario in a multi-phase project to do the remediation on a phase-by-phase basis? And is that an acceptable and typical approach to a development like this?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's very common. And most of that is due to, you're getting funds, everything you need to support that first phase of development. So, yeah, I've seen this very often done in staging. And like I said, some of the things that we've done in the past is temporary fencing or some sort of fencing, to limit access to those contaminated pieces.
So any other store, I guess, just examples, because I think the phasing will be an issue, and obviously that ultimately is not your call, that's Eagle's call. Who's the agency that determines if it's allowed or not allowed?
We will need to get approval from Eagle.
Okay, so it's not your call. The state's going to have that call as far as what could be phased and guide cleanup. Would that be fair to say they're going to guide the steps?
So how that typically works is we lay out the plan and submit it to them for approval.
Perfect. And if I could just have the audience try to save those comments out there. It's very distracting to our speakers and everyone else, just out of respect for those that are here, please. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Did you?
I know the city has its own environmental engineer here as well. I don't know if they want any reaffirmation from a separate third party, but I'll leave that to you.
We might grab him later. We'll see.
Okay,
But,
fine.
I have one
Yeah, go ahead.
question,
Steve?
if I may.
Councilman?
Regarding the cleanup, you state that you have to do a lot more soil borings, and that's obvious and everything. What happens if you're approved and you're on to doing your investigative and your site work testing and all that stuff, and they say that it's so bad that you're going to have to mediate 80,000 square yards of soil to a landfill? Does that change whether the development moves forward or not?
I mean, ultimately, we have to be able to finance the entire development, which includes the remediation or whatever the due care plan is required. And if it required that something that was financially infeasible, we wouldn't be able to go forward. But I think, is that true? Does that answer your question, or does that address the question?
Yeah, we all know it all boils down to the money, and you got to be able to afford the development to begin with. But and that in the environmental impact statement wouldn't give us that answer either, correct?
It would not.
Okay.
I've got a slide coming up that addresses that. If you don't mind just holding off on that.
Sure.
Griffin, go ahead to the next slide. There we go. Right on time. So I know that there have been many questions about the environmental impacts statement, and several were in Plan Commission, and I believe there were some at the previous council meeting as well. So I went and I took a look at the language in the South Haven ordinance, and these are the items that would be required as part of an environmental impact statement. I quoted at the top the language, said statement should analyze the impact of the proposed development on the following items. And then I've paraphrased a little bit, but these are the kind of if you could imagine a binder with several reports within them, these would be the reports that would be expected. And so there's impact on the municipal utility system, and that was provided by city staff, as was the fire department also reviewed in under the PUD review. Police department reviewed the impact in the PUD review. The impact on the school system was also part of the PUD review. Solid waste disposal, trash pickup, and so forth, part of the PUD review. And then the soils, groundwater, floodplain, et cetera, is really what we were just talking about. And that is all, the phase one will take a look at what's the past history, what are the concerns of possible contamination. The phase two are the actual borings. And the phase three is the plan to stabilize the site that will be done through the construction of the project. The last thing was a traffic study. And as I said to you, Mayor, I guess it was 6 or 8, I guess it was more than 6 months ago now, but you asked if we would do a traffic study. At the time, I said I would be happy to. I'm still happy to do it. I didn't think it was the appropriate or was necessarily part of the PUD process. But I'm happy to provide one, and that can be something that can be reviewed at when we put in our building permits, or sometime after we've received our financing and we know the project's going forward. Be happy to provide a traffic study. Next slide, Griffin. Oh, so Councilman Schleck, are there any questions that you have on that?
I'm writing one down before I try and say it.
Okay. All right. Clement, do you mind coming up for a second? I'm asking Clement Adieu, our civil engineer, to come up. I don't know if this is an overly technical question or not, but I wanted him to be here. I think the slide addresses it fairly well, but it's my understanding that there was a question about whether soil borings need to be done now to ensure that we're able to place the underground detention. And I've consulted with Clement. I'll say what I understand to be the case, and then he can kind of follow up. But if you take a look at the yellow outline of the black hash marks on the page, that's the underground detention area. And if you look at the whole picture, it really is basically the phase one site. And so my understanding from Clement, and he can speak to it more, is there's a lot of flexibility in where we locate that. And so if we had a problem in one location, we can still there's a lot of adjustments. And I'll probably a few sentences past my expertise at this point.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm here to answer any questions you have regarding the detention basin. Is there any particular question you would like me to address, apart from the elevation of the detention basin?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure what was asked last time was really, as stated, if we do a boring and we find out, oh, there's a problem here, if it needs to be shifted, or if, again, for some strange reason, more soil need to be removed from that space, then you are anticipating the flexibility to adjust that.
Yeah, because of the nature of detention systems, they're modular in nature, so you can reconfigure them in different shapes. So we can have a Z shape, we can have an L shape, we can have an S shape. So if we find the soil boring in an area that indicates the water table is too high, we can have more soil borings indicate where we can put them, and we can adjust the shape, the sizes, and the layout of the detention basins to address and to meet the required detention volumes.
Okay, sounds good. That answers your question, Steve.
Are the detention basins part of the open space calculation?
part of the open space calculation, I believe it's in there too, but the open space calculation is the areas that are 20 foot that are green. So the parking lot paved area is not open space.
Councilman, they're below the surface of the parking lot.
So if you reduce setbacks and stuff like that to less than 20 foot, that don't get to count towards open space? So what if the retention pond has to get larger and longer? That wouldn't be able to be counted towards open space, correct?
It's not above ground.
It's below ground.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to also mention the liner, that there's a liner, just to clarify.
In terms of the contamination, if we need to line the detention basin to keep water from escaping from the detention basin into the soils, we can do that. Sometimes Eagle requires it in sites that are contaminated. They ask you to line up the detention basin. I've worked in several projects where that is the case. So you either put a clay liner or a plastic liner to keep water within the detention basin itself, where nothing is escaping into the soil, but into the city system.
Okay. I have a question. At what point during the development would you start the soil borings?
We're doing the phase one now as part of our tax credit application. And if we were awarded, then we would quickly move into doing the phase two and the borings. Because we need to know what the scope of remediation is so that we can properly budget for it and plan for it as part of the construction project.
Okay, thanks.
So if you don't receive the tax credits, you're not moving forward?
We wouldn't
Phase
have any,
one.
we wouldn't have resources, we won't have resources until we have the tax credits. Any other questions on this topic?
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Sounds good on that. Thank you for coming.
Next slide, please. One of the questions related to comments from Fire Chief on the site plan. He noted that the fire lane where my arrow is pointed on this slide was at 25 feet, and it was suboptimal for the turning radius and asked that it be increased to 26. We've done that. It had a very modest effect on the overall open space calculation. We've recalculated and confirmed with staff that it still meets the threshold in terms of as it relates to the PUD, in terms of an open space being providing a bonus, a density bonus. Yeah, please.
I just wanted to add that, as we mentioned about the topics of concern from the residents, I mean, green space and play lots were very important. So I just wanted to reiterate, as Jeff said, we have a 10% above the minimum open space, green space that's required for this project.
Any questions on that one? Okay, thank you. Next slide. This is more of a general comment that we've had on a number of occasions. We've been accused of not hearing public comment, and I would say probably the most persistent public comment through the various meetings has been related to parking. This is something I put in the Plan Commission presentation, just noting that there were comments related to the parking at the City Council presentation. At that time, we had 178 spaces. When we presented for the redevelopment agreement, we were able to find an additional 19 spaces to get it up to 197. Again, the comment remained, and we continue to try and find ways to get more parking. And in the program that we presented in the PUD, we're up to 208 parking spaces. So I just wanted to be on the record that we do hear public comments, and I think, as you know, parking has been an important topic, and we've continued to try and find more ways to get additional parking on the site. Any questions on that?
Do you want to share your experience with why you're able to get by with just in other locations?
Yeah.
What are you finding? What's the average versus building a asphalt jungle? How's that?
Sure. I've actually got a couple of slides on that coming up. I'm not sure if they're the next ones or not. Go ahead. So look, it's about 2 or 3 slides ahead, Mayor, but I will address it. So again, we're here to talk about the PUD. This is the table that we presented to the Plan Commission showing, kind of a framework of what the development is. All of the green check marks are areas where our proposal is in complete conformance with the typical zoning for this development. Where we have the orange circles are areas where we're asking for relief, and those would be parking. We're looking for relief from the 2 spaces per dwelling unit requirement. There's the 2 setbacks, one on Elkinburg and Indiana, where the requirement is 25 feet, and we are proposing at 16 and a half and 15 feet respectively. And then the environmental impact statement as we discussed. Next slide. Okay, so this is just a summary of the relief requested, but I also wanted to flag the public benefits that come from the plan that we've prepared. And the most important benefits are the reason we're here, the reason we were procured to take on this project, the reason that South Haven put together the ad hoc housing committee, put out the RFP and so forth, is to develop new affordable housing. And so we're providing, as you know, 118 new affordable rental units, at 26 new affordable for sale units. In addition, because of the way that we've configured the site, we're able to consolidate the green space as much as possible, which allows us to create walking paths and trails and connecting the bike path over to Elkinburg Park and so forth. And so we think, and most of the feedback that we've had is that the plan is it's a good trade-off. I mean, I think what we're asking is relatively small, and the benefits for the city, based on the city's own analysis and actions, is tremendous with this new development. Next. Again, so this is the overall site plan, and one of the comments that we had in Plan Commission was it would be nice if there was some space for guest parking. We determined that we were able to set aside 10 spaces at the off of Indiana for long-term guests. Next slide. So again, one of the things that we're required to do as part of the PUD analysis is look at what would be allowed if we didn't have the PUD versus what we're asking for. This here is a conforming site. This development we effectively could do of right. But we don't think that it provides the same benefits and the same qualities as the plan that we prepared. Just notice all of the parking. Basically, the entire center of the site is taken up with parking. The buildings are spread around to the perimeter, and but it does have the required number of parking spaces. Next slide. Here we have the 2 sites side by side, and I think that with side by side you really see in full relief the effect of the various pathways that we have through, the path, the biking and walking trail is immediately to the left of the development there, multiple ways in and out of the site towards that open space. And again, that Elkinburg Park is just across Indiana and slightly down the street. And so we're able to provide play lots, walking trails, and a general sense of green space. Both of the Phase 2 and the for sale development at the top is connected by paths, so the parking is in the rear, and they have nice green spaces that you'll see some illustrations of in the slides coming ahead. This addresses the mayor's question about why we're comfortable with the parking mix that we've put together. And one of the things that I really want to be very clear about is Habitat has zero interest in having insufficient parking. It doesn't help us. It doesn't help the development. We want sufficient parking, but what we don't want is excess parking or a lot of excess parking. All of the parking spaces could be green. So we want to have enough for the cars, but we don't want to have blacktop that just makes the neighborhood hot in the summer and slippery in the winter. So we manage somewhere between 20,000 and 25,000 units at any given time. And I asked our property managers to look at similar building types that we have. And the question I asked wasn't how many parking spaces do you have per unit, but I asked how many parking spaces per unit are used. And so that's a different question. So if you look at the Belleville, Michigan, which is a far suburban Detroit area site, there's 1,112 units, occupied 1,034. We have 1,745 parking spaces there, but only 1,065 vehicles. The utilization is a little under one space per unit. You find across these properties that I highlighted, that's pretty typical in the give or take 1.25 is what we generally see at these types of developments, and we've got some pictures on the next slide if you don't mind going to that, Griffin. The exact designs are not the same, but the types of buildings are the same. 3-story buildings, walk-up buildings. We call them garden style in the industry. And these are not downtown Chicago or downtown Detroit. These are in suburban, exurban Michigan City you're familiar with, Riverside, Bellevue, Michigan, Edina, Minnesota. And they're not areas where there's a subway 2 blocks away. They're not areas where there's a bus right in front of the building. This is typical. I think what is forgotten is there's been a shift in household size over the last 30 years. And what we typically see in these developments is a single head of household. Not exclusively. Sometimes they're couples. Sometimes, there's more than, but on balance, most of the units have a single head of household, and that's why we have one car. Next slide, please. This is a lot of detail. If people have questions, I'll use this slide, but I don't want to bog things down with excessive detail. Basically, this is just saying that we've addressed the parking issue on a development basis. We're also addressing it on a phase basis, so that there's not a surplus or a deficit in parking on any phase. Next slide. Moving off of why don't we pause for a second, because parking's been a big issue. Does anybody have questions about parking?
The 208 spaces that you have available, does that include street parking, or it's all on?
No, that does not include the street parking.
Thanks.
Any other? Okay. So going back to the waiver requests, the last waiver that we haven't discussed is the setback. The setback is the space between the sidewalk and the building, and the required setback and under typical zoning scenario would be 25 feet. We've proposed 16 feet on Elkinberg and 15 on Indiana. Is that right, or is it the other way around? And I thought a good starting point was what was there before. It's less than 15 feet on Indiana, roughly 15 feet on Elkinberg. Next slide. And then we also, one of the, probably the way when we start planning is we look at relevant sites as baseline. We looked at the 125 Elkinberg site, which is the closest building to the proposed development. Roughly 16 and a half feet, according to Google measure on Google Maps, is the setback from the sidewalk to the building there. And so we pick up that line. I mean, it's not unintentional that it's 16 and a half feet versus 20 versus 10. It's intended to pick up a line, and we think it's an appropriate setback particularly for the block in question. Next slide. And then we're going to just show a few pictures of renderings of the site. And this is, a landscape vision for the site with tall plants, native plants, some trees. One of the planning commissioners asked if that's the exact tree that we're going to put in. It's a tree, and there will be trees. I don't know if that's going to be a maple or an oak, but there will be trees, and there'll be medium-sized flowering trees, decorative trees, if I can say it in a way that's not overly technical.
Not fruit trees.
Not fruit trees, thank you. So again, the idea is it's in our interest to have a great development. We think that this development has great potential with the design that we have and the trade-offs that we're able to achieve. Next slide, please. Again, with the setbacks, with the plan and consolidating the parking and the parking numbers that we have, we're able to provide these nice pathways and green space. This is a rendering of the space between the for-sale townhouses. Next slide. And then this is from 125 Elkenberg looking towards the Sohaven. Next slide. And that's the end of my presentation, but I'm happy to answer questions or ask our team to assist.
Anything else? I think I'm good. Presentation was excellent, so I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. All right. We've heard that part. How about, shall we do public? We're about 5 minutes. You want to start public comment before we take a pause? I don't want to we might need to break into it, but if the group's interested, we can go a little bit and then take a pause.
Yeah.
Okay. Why don't we go ahead? We're going to take public comment at this time. There's a few folks here, so just be respectful of the person before and after. That'd be wonderful. If you would like to speak, come on up, state your name and address. You'll have up to 5 minutes. Miss Megan's got my secret stop clock, and at 5 minutes, the floor will drop out from underneath you, and
Good.
see you tomorrow.
All right.
No, just kidding. All right.
I wouldn't care.
Thank you.
Nancy Nat, 125 Elkenberg. Jeff Head's reasoning for waiving the EIS is still flawed and insufficient. I remain steadfast that the application for the PUD is incomplete and should not be voted on until the environmental impact statement, voted on unanimously by City Council, is completed by an environmental engineer or consultant. Mr. Head's rationale for waiving the EIS only reinforces the need for one. To begin with, this ordinance is mandatory for all developers, and it was made mandatory in 2021. To even the playing field for all developers, this needs to be enforced. The ordinance clearly states that a waiver can only be granted if it would result in a higher quality of development than would be possible using conventional zoning standards. Clearly, the waiver is not going to improve the quality of this development. Mr. Head's letter, point by point, first phase development only reinforces the need for an EIS. There is nothing in the purchase sales agreement pertaining to the protection of exposure to contamination for residents living in Phase 1 during the construction of the other phases. There is nothing in the PSA that places any consequences on the developer if people are exposed to contamination during the phased construction. The EIS would provide guidance on the risk to residents being exposed to contamination during this phased development. EnviroLogic on the 1018 presentation, it was clearly stated that the Michigan Department of Great Lakes and Energy, EGLE, provides the framework with regards to remediation. They do not oversee projects. I quote, These projects are self-implemented by the developer. It is in the developer's hands to implement the remediation requirements. Trailside is a perfect example of how things can fall through the cracks. The state of Michigan Eagle Division set the requirements needed for remediation and protection of the citizens. The developers did not consistently follow through with the remediation plan. Citizens had to call Eagle several times to report violations. Developers only received a phone call with no fines or consequences, while residents continued to breathe in the exposed contaminated soil. Currently, there is exposed soil at the Indiana site across the street from a residential area. The mandatory EIS will provide another layer of protection for citizens so the same mistakes at Trailside and at the factories aren't repeated at Overton. Some of the remaining criteria Jeff refers to addressed the EIS addressed adequately, that things were done adequately in regards to the EIS. In his opinion, that is not a very objective one. The city staff is not proficient, nor should they be, in doing an EIS. A professional who has the experience in doing an EIS will provide more information and uncover things that may have been missed. I'm not sympathetic to Habitat's predicament with missing the EIS. I followed and knew about this ordinance, and I wrote Jeff Head last October stating my concerns about the outdated 2015 Environmental Industrial Report and recommendations from environmental engineers about the carcinogenic trichloroethylene that needs to be tested at Overton. The EIS ordinance was in effect when I made him aware of the issues. As a developer with his many years of experience, Mr. Head should have followed the city staff if he would have discovered that there is a mandatory EIS ordinance. Habitat's excuse for waiving the criteria in this ordinance by stating that it is unfair, burdensome, and expensive is ludicrous and sophomoric. It is Habitat's responsibility to follow our ordinances, especially mandatory ones that are meant to protect the public.
You've got 1 minute.
Thank you. The EIS is a contingency that is needed and was promised to allow residents of South Haven a transparent, objective report on how the Overton development impacts them. City Council waiving the EIS would show bias to Habitat at the expense of the residents. Quality, affordable, and most importantly, safe housing should be the goal of the City Council. I have a photo of what is currently going on at the site on Indiana with the exposed toxic soil that citizens have been dealing with for over 2 years, and we still have not addressed the issue properly. So I'll leave that with Kate, and maybe they can handle it, because we have no oversight in our area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa Beck, 879 Monroe Boulevard. I've never spoken to this many people before, so excuse me if I get really nervous. What I'd like to address is I think that the EIS is important for all the reasons that the woman in front of me said. I think that we need to prove that the property is safe. We're building housing for people. It should be good housing. It should be safe housing. We shouldn't have to worry about toxics. The other thing I wanted to address that I did not see in the presentation is the number of one-bedrooms. I've spoken about this several times. There are 88 one-bedrooms out of 118 apartments. That is 74.5% one-bedrooms. What that means under the state of Michigan law is that there can be no children. There has to be a two-bedroom if you have one child. There has to be a three-bedroom if you have a boy and a girl. That means that no single mothers can move there, no single fathers can move there, no grandparents caring for their kids, grandchildren can move there, no couples that want to have a family that have rented an apartment and they want to live there and make a family, they have to move. They can't live there. And the same goes with the teachers, the firemen. Anybody who wants to start a family can't live there. And I thought that the purpose was to make this affordable, but also for families. I find that just unacceptable. I just don't understand it. I think there could be less one-bedrooms, and there could be other apartments where families can live. The other thing that I wanted to address that I think is I don't know, really bad too, is no elevator. I know it may seem silly to some people, but we're saying that, well, the one-bedrooms, a lot of them are for seniors. Well, if they're for seniors, they need to be able to get to their apartment. They can't all be on the first floor if they're all going to be for seniors. And the lowest rent there, according to the Michigan and the state law and everything, would be $581. If you multiply $581 by 88, you will find that you get, let me look at my notes here, but $51,128. If you, the elevator that they said would cost was $250,000. If you divide that, it would take Habitat exactly 4.88 months to afford an elevator. That's 4 months out of 30 years, a 30-year lease. I don't think that's asking too much to have an elevator to be put in. The other thing that I wanted to address was the impact on the school. That was in the EIS, and they said it was included in the packet, but it was opinion of a few people saying it wouldn't impact it. And there was some confusion when I spoke on this before, but my point about it impacting is negatively impacting enrollment. I've heard many council people, I've been at all these meetings talking about one of the goals was enrollment for the school. When you have 88 units where you can't have kids, I don't see that's happening in the school. And I think it would be good to have an EIS to discuss that and to see what the impact might be if there's a way to make this development better. I think all of us want affordable housing. I think we just want it done right, and we want it for the real needs of the community and not for Habitat's pocket. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments.
Mary Hasley, 726 North Shore Drive. I'd like to clarify the question that seems to continually be incorrectly stated. For phase remediation, the remediation will occur concurrently, according to the contract, as construction occurs. Therefore, and construction only goes with funding. So if something's not funded, then you're going to have one construction, phase one, next to unremediated parcels. That is the concern. If it is funded, then you have them immediately adjacent to cleanup as it's occurring. It's a no-win situation. It just does not seem appropriate, and that's why the EIS is so critical. Also, we talked about variances, waivers. I sent this to the City Council this morning. There are several items in pink and bright, darker pink that Habitat did not include in their waivers. They have biasly interpreted our zoning ordinance and only identified waivers that they could get around and excluded the waivers that would really put a stop to their proposal. It's more as though they're asking for spot zoning. More importantly, I ask our elected officials to please protect our community. This is, although STRs are an issue right now, and I appreciate that, but it's amendable. And we certainly hope that will happen. But this is brick and mortar. Once it's started, that's it. This will be here long after we are gone. Please make sure this is done right the first time. This is why it's so critical that the waivers are not granted and the EIS is a true concern. With regard to soil borings for phase one, first, the map that was put up, it looks like the detention ponds are actually not just phase one, but phase two. So that needs to be corrected before it's presented again. Habitat said they do the environmental borings, but what's being ignored is what we already know about this location. Factory condos had to have remediation. The water will go west-northwest. The environmental impact statement will help us appreciate what's there and what is the impact on the environment around the situation. We all know that Eagle and MSHDA will be involved in setting standards. But what is going to happen? Is this really the right place? And this is why the whole PUD needs to be evaluated, and this needs to be done before the PUD is approved and the final site plan is approved. Ignorance is not bliss in putting the cart before the horse. Habitat restates the EIS issue is making the land safe for people. But as we said, MSHDA and Eagle will be involved. We ask that any approval require Habitat to publicly share at a minimum phase one, phase two, and due care plans, and penalties be asserted if it takes more than one call to Eagle to correct the noncompliance. You've already heard of that issue on Trailside. When the city initially said they contacted the developer said he was compliant. I contacted Eagle And as soon as I explained what was going on, Eagle said, I need to call the developer back. Fencing was delivered the very next day. Citizens should not have to do this. Therefore, we need controls inputted onto this PUD. What is missed is what happens on the whole site and the impact on the neighbors and the neighborhoods. Nobody is watching out for them. Neighbors not only need neighbors, but we need to know our health, safety, and welfare will not be harmed from the huge construction that is proposed. And that's the purpose of the EIS. Do not go blindly. With regard to parking, the ratio, it's based on comparisons outside of our car-dependent area. We have several similar complexes here, and those parking ratios were ignored. There's Section 1800, subsection 12, that requires setting aside green space that does not count towards open space, so that if there is a miscalculation and parking is insufficient, there will be available spaces for parking, because in the winter, we cannot park off-street. Mayor Smith has said we need more data. He even sent Kate a letter on May 31st requesting more data.
You've got 1 minute.
He restated that on September 7th. When will we get that information shared? With regard to the parallel plan, it is not compliant. I have routinely pointed out errors in the parallel plan. Setbacks are not correct. When will the developer be held to the same standards as all other developers, like those at Trailside? They have to comply. Habitat has not. Habitat needs to update the waivers. They need to update the parallel plan before any hearing is set at which this PUD and final site plan will be approved. There is no ignorance. This is not a place where ignorance is bliss. Granting these waivers is not justified under the circumstances. And with regard to the trees, at the February 16th meeting, Habitat was told the setback is too small for the trees in the site.
Thanks, Mayor. Appreciate it.
Joe Wilkins, 811 Indiana Street. Let me start by saying I'm in total support of this project going forward without any further delay. As a resident, I lived in South Haven as a part of Ward 1 for over 50-plus years, and to witness the gentrification that is going on in Ward 1 is very sad, which makes it more important that this project is done. The lack of affordable housing is not just a black or white issue, but growing up on the south side of Ward 1 was where many people of color lived. And in spite of the area being labeled as the zone, in spite of the redlining issues, the south side of Ward 1 was a place that many people of color called home. While growing up, Ward 1 was a location of many factories that wasn't welcome in other parts of the city. In fact, men such as the late Fred Cunningham and my own father worked close to 30 years at National Motors Casting. He started out working there making $56 a week. National Motors was one of the hardest and nastiest factories around. You couldn't recognize the men when they got off of the job because of the dust from the factory. And with my father, many of those men died from some form of cancer. But they worked and they sacrificed their lives to take care of their families in those factories. Along with them, we experienced the pollution that came from these factories while they were up and running and during their removal. And that is why, in my opinion, if any voice should be heard concerning what is done with the Overton property, it ought to be those whose fathers and mothers paid a vested interest with their lives, and those of us who had to deal with the living beside a factory for so many years. And that's the reason why so many are here on tonight to support the Overton project. And if you can, I would like to take this time to ask all those that might not be wanting to stand at this time if you're in support of the Overton project. I know some people are not used to public speaking. Please stand at this time. Everybody that's in support of the Overton project on the outside, everybody please stand. Everybody please stand that's in support. These people, some of them might not be willing to speak, aren't comfortable with public speaking, but I counted at least 20 to 25 people that came here tonight in support of this project. Council, they're here. You may be seated. They are here to let the council know that we are in need of affordable housing in this city. Back in the day, growing up in Ward 1, we cherished the moments of building relationships, friendships with other young boys and girls, as well as with our neighbors. But as we fast forward to now, because of the lack of affordable housing, the overall population of our people population of our city, people in our communities are constantly decreasing. The student enrollment in our schools are constantly decreasing. The ability to attract new talent and businesses are constantly decreasing. And as a pastor, the members of our churches are constantly decreasing. These are just a few of the areas that is being directly impacted by the lack of affordable housing. Unfortunately, tonight, you've heard and will hear more from those that are in opposition to this project for some reason. For example, green space, contamination, setback, parking, density, and the latest being the lack of an elevator. When in fact, when it comes to green space, there are some who live in condos that have zero green space. When it comes to contamination, I want to remind the council, though there was some concern about the EIS form that was missed by the city, it was also missed by Habitat. But it should not be a reason to slow up or stop this process. When we know that the state will closely monitor everything when it comes to contamination, Habitat cannot lay one brick without meeting the state requirement. When it comes to the setback, this was the result of trying to meet the concerns of the opposing group by pushing the property back, and they still met the guidelines. When it comes to parking issues, that was cleared up. That was stated by Jeff. And I believe Habitat allowed for 1.4 parking spots. I believe the city standards is 2. But keep in mind the state requirement of the project.
You got 1 minute.
State in mind of the project is only one. The state requires 1.2. When it comes to density, there's really no issues. In closing, the group that has brought up these candid issues, they say they are for the project, all while they keep bringing up different issues in their attempt to kill the project or postpone it from moving forward. Keep in mind, this is done without any concern for those who have no place to stay, those who are forced to move away from the city they were born and raised in, or those who simply would love the opportunity to live in a place like South Haven. And if we keep these people in mind, I ask the council to do what is right and vote yes to move this project forward without any further delay.
That's time. Thank you. How about if we'll do 2 more and then we'll do a little break? How's that sound?
Hi, I'm Lisa Croupiars, 561 Indiana in South Haven. I'm a full-time resident here at South Haven and a registered voter. I'm here again to express my support for the Overton project planned to be built at the corner of Elkenberg and Indiana Avenue. This affordable housing development is something desperately needed here at South Haven. We have learned that at any given time, there are 150 people working in the downtown area of South Haven. Combine that with others who work in the city, at our schools, and at the hospital, workers who cannot afford to live here. Everybody deserves to live where they work if they choose to do so. I think of Overton as entry-level housing, where people can start living at South Haven because they have a job here, then maybe consider making it their permanent home. Right now, this is not an available option in our community. It's why the concept of the Overton project was developed. Strong opposition to the Overton project erupted after this idea had been in the works for a number of years. Prior to this recent opposition uprising, there had been community forums, focus groups, even interviews with individual South Haven residents regarding their questions and concerns about this plan. Then at the last moment, a couple individuals stirred things up to oppose the Overton project. These couple people have said they were merely giving voice to residents who claimed they hadn't been heard. The truth is, the individuals leading the opposition are fairly new residents to South Haven. They weren't even here for all the work that had been previously done to engage the community in this plan for affordable housing. The opposition has been grasping for straws from their very beginning. They've fabricated issues to scare the community. Then as each issue got addressed, they switched to a new idea to try to keep us fearful. They want us to be scared of Overton. Plus, these opposition individuals apparently like it when we're all confused. They're trying to baffle us with bluster. This is how they are trying to prevent the affordable housing that is desperately needed here. And they will keep coming up with scary things to try to prevent the Overton project from becoming a reality. But the real elephant in the room here is about the other. someone who might be different than us. The opposition's real issue is about the kind of people who will be living at Overton, or the people they think will be living there. South Haven is not anyone's own little community. The opposition doesn't get to call the shots on who gets to live here and who shouldn't. Honestly, check your history. As Joe just told us, South Haven has always been a very diverse community, long before many of us were even aware of its beauty and appeal. If the opposition doesn't like the Overton project solution for affordable housing, then come up with a better idea. I suggested this last time I spoke on this topic here at City Council, but we continue to hear only opposition and bluster. No new alternative ideas, just nitpicking and negativity. Don't rip down all the work that's been done to address this housing need in our community prior to you coming here. You have not done anything to figure it out, nor have you come up with a different solution. My husband and I have been fortunate enough to do a midwinter pilgrimage to Key West, Florida the last couple years. Key West has a motto, close to perfect, far from normal. Very cute and true, Key West reminds us a lot of South Haven. But they also have another motto, one human family. All people are equal members of one human family. This motto is meant to unite people regardless of any differences that are simply superficial distinctions that cannot be allowed to be twisted into cultural divisions. What is it going to take for us to say yes to the Overton project and affordable housing here at South Haven? This issue belongs to our whole community, and we are all in this together. Let's examine the barriers we may be tempted to erect in order to exclude those who are not of the same socioeconomic or cultural background as we are, or who differ from us in ways that make us uncomfortable. After all, we are one human family. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Let's do one more. If we just,
Thank you.
one more, take a break.
Dan Agnello, 964 Everett Parkway. First, I'd like to say none of us are against Overton, and we resent the fact we make up these things the last few months. Everything in these meetings is ordinances. It's ordinance, ordinance, ordinance. It's up to the City Council, Planning Commission, and staff to exempt the ordinances. It's all in the ordinances. First, I'll start out about the fact about Jeff's letter. Jeff's letter indicated that the Planning Commission and City Council had four main items when they rejected or the tie votes for the Overton project. It was soil belongs required before construction, the 26-foot drive, an EIS is required, and the desire to see alternate plans with less density. Jeff's letter dated the 28th addressed items 1 and 2, but they refused to generate an EIS or alternate lower density plans. And I will discuss item 4 in more detail. Jeff stated that he prepared the PUD site plan with the support of the council and extensive input from interested South Haven residents. Well, for the past 15 months, the residents have talked about density, parking, and the environment. The parking only changed about 30 parking spaces in the last 15 months. The density never changed. Well, it went up 155 until the loft said that's too many. Then they dropped it down to 144. It's been 144 for almost a year. Nothing has changed on density at all. They didn't listen to everybody. In the comments on the April, the May, June meetings, half of the comments were density and parking. Nothing happened after those meetings. In the June 21st meeting, Jeff stated, we asked him the question, how many units can you build and still make money for rental units? He said 60. Have we seen an alternate plan for 60? No. Even a parallel plan, as some of the people have mentioned before, is not correct. It doesn't meet the RM1 ordinance requirements or anything. Based on the fact that these two items have not been addressed properly, also, he had the format for the EIS, and Jeff said that all these things are being met. Well, if you look at the 4 or 5 examples that our housing consultant gave in the last couple of packages, and it's in this package here, there's about 20 different paragraphs or sections in the outline that's required in a very good EIS. He only highlighted about 8 or 9 items. One of those items is alternate plans. I saw many of those, they said, oh, we looked at this, and this, and we decided to give these to alternates, and here's why, and everything. There has not been one alternate plan submitted by Habitat up to this date. So based on all these items, the fact that 2 out of 4 items Jeff did not address in his letter, I would recommend that the city council not approve going to the next meeting. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. All right, let's go ahead, take a break, shall we?
We need a motion?
Yeah, I do. Please.
Second.
We got a motion, we got a second to, we'll take a 5-minute recess and reconvene here about 8:32.
We just went on TV.
All right. Any sign of Wendy?
I'm a little chilled myself.
It is cold in here.
If I put my coat on and my hat on, I think I'll get the hint.
We all stand up at once.
Ready?
All right, everybody, we're going to get going again. So, all right. Motion to go back into open session.
Make a motion to go back into open session.
I'll second.
Motion is second to go back into open session. All those in favor say aye.
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 We're back in open session. Okay, we're back to the public comment section regarding the PUD application for the Overton site. If anybody else like to come up, just as a reminder, you get one shot only here. So if there's anybody else, and if not,
My name is Mickey Paul, and I live on 871 Indiana Street, and I'm absolutely voting for this, and I hope it come past soon as possible. Thank you.
thank you for speaking. Good to see you.
Oh, you'll have to excuse me. I'm very nervous. I'm not a public speaker. I'm only here for my passion.
Hey, Candy, do me a favor. State your name and address.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're okay.
Candace Griga. Resident is 614 Bailey Avenue. I serve on the Housing Commission, and I'm a registered voter. I'm here to support the Overton project. I trust the council will make all the right decisions to make this an overdue development a reality. My passion is for affordable housing for seniors, and quite a few of you know that about me. Too many of our seniors have lived their whole lives in South Haven and can no longer afford to live here in their last years. I'm excited to learn that the seniors and veterans are a priority along with teachers, firefighters, and police. I know that this is much work to do. We have too much work to do for the seniors, but this is a great start. And even if it's not going to be at the Overton project, it has to take place somewhere here in South Haven. And I thank you all very much.
Thanks, Candy. And thanks for serving on the Housing Commission, too. Appreciate it. Anybody else? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Erica Driver, 418 Abel Street. I am in full support of the Overton project without any delay, mainly for the purposes of the fact that the project is going to take time to get developed, to get started, to go, so that adds more time for housing to be available for people that are in dire need. So without any delay, I fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hello. I'm Kay Engelbrecht, 125 Elkenberg Street. I'm here to say that I totally support the Overton project. I think it's very important for the city of South Haven, but I want it to be done right. You will hear, or you've already heard, facts presented in support of holding fast to the city of South Haven's ordinances and rules of development in our town. Tonight, I'm asking you to do the right thing for the long-term benefit of the city of South Haven and its current and future residents. Looking back on my life and those of my parents, relatives, acquaintances, co-workers, I remember circumstances when timing seemed so critical and sooner was always deemed better than later. Closing dates, moving dates, groundbreaking dates, grand opening dates, they were so important. Several times when I've moved, I've had to wait longer than I thought necessary. When my mom was terminally ill, when my dad died, when my husband died, I moved 5 different times in different cities, and I finally landed in South Haven where I'm very, very happy, and I have been for 5 years. But there were so many delays through the times in my past where the I's had to be dotted, the T's had to be crossed. The requirements, the protocol, the standards always seemed endless. It was so frustrating and seemed like trivial hoops that I had to jump through. In reality, 2 years, 5 years, even 6 months later, those all-important self-imposed deadlines didn't matter. It was the end result, the long-term result, that mattered. The same is true for the Overton development. It seems like the process has gone on forever, but we're at one of the most important points. All the rules and requirements are in place for a reason, for everyone who does a development in the city of South Haven. And those hoops must be jumped through to protect the end and the long-term result. Overton is so important for our community. It's crucial that you as council members, and crucial for the future residents and neighbors, that you respect and follow the requirements as they are set. I don't want any of you or any of us to have to say we should have followed the rules. We made a mistake because we were in a hurry. The rules didn't seem that important. Boy, were we wrong. We caved to pressure from the developer due to his deadlines and will forever regret it. What were we thinking? Again, Overton is so important for the city of South Haven. It's crucial that you as council members, and crucial for the future residents and neighbors, that you respect the requirements that are set. Make sure you'll be proud one day to say, yes, the project was delayed longer than we wanted. It was incredibly frustrating to put the brakes on until all the requirements were met, but it was the right thing to do and well worth it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments.
Good evening. My name is Fred Sanders, 322 Spencer Avenue. I'm here to say that I would like to see this project to go ahead and go on through. You've heard the pros, you've heard the cons, but let's look at it honestly. People need affordable housing in this town. Too many people have to move out of this town because we can't afford to stay here. A lot of folks grew up in this town. There's no place for us to go. Now, if we're going to do this, let's all get together instead of backbiting each other, trying to stab one another in the back. Why don't we get together and go down here and try and help them out? The lady said this is a community of one. No, this is a community of hundreds that's trying to become one. We can't become one fighting. And I just ask that everybody please work together. Too many times we've spent all our lives fighting one another. This is something for the city. This is something for everyone. This is something to make us all proud. It's not a proud moment right now.
Thank you for your comments. All right. Anybody else on this topic?
Hi, my name is Deborah Paul. I live at 871 Indiana Street, and I approve this project going forward. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Was there anybody else? Saw someone coming up from over there.
Hello, Pamela Jones Frazier. Oh, quite close. 72300 Erica Way, South Haven, Michigan. And I, too, hope that you guys approve this project on tonight to go further with this project. as I've heard, like I've just heard the pros and the cons, but the reality is we need affordable housing in South Haven. We need it now. It is crucial that we get affordable housing and get this project started immediately. We have families that are moving all over, work here in our town, but have to be housed somewhere else, and that's not good. We need affordable housing. Please approve this project so we can go on. And we know that the company is going to do what they need to do. We're going to make sure they do what they need to do to make sure it's done correctly, but let's not stall it any longer. It's enough. Let's just do it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Good evening, Dave Tuttle, 116 Clinton. I'm in favor of a project like this. I think the community has said we want something, but there needs to be less density. That message has not been heard. The builder is going to do what they want, regardless of how much people are saying. So you have to have the controls in place and in writing with penalties to force them to do what the community is requiring. If you go forward without an EIS, obviously they're just going to do whatever they want. They've already shown that here with a wanton disregard for what the community has said. Mayor Smith, several months ago you said in addressing the high school and the traffic that of course there's going to be a study. We're going to know what the impact is. They've stood up here tonight and said, well, we'll get there, but there won't be an impact. We've got a high school with lots of young drivers in that area. We've got a trail where there are lots of people on bikes and walking back and forth, and nobody has been able to stand up and say, what's the impact on all these pedestrians? What's the impact on our school there? That is necessary and part of the rules, which they are trying to waive and say, we'll get to it, we'll get to it. It's your opportunity to say, this is what you have to do to build this community that we've asked for here. And you need to force them to do that. And if they're not willing to do that, you need to say, no, we can't go forward. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments.
Good evening. My name is Joe Wilkins, 811 Indiana Avenue, and I am support of this project moving forward.
Good evening, Joe. Good to see you. Anybody else? Going once, going twice. Oh, you're coming up. Our youngest attendee tonight.
Hello, my name is Yasmin Burton. I live at 1026th Avenue, South Haven, Michigan. I've been a resident here for up to 16 years. My dad settled here after he served in Gulf of Mexico. So we've been traveling and we decided to reside here because it was a better school opportunity. I was able to do early college here in South Haven, and I was able to explore. I work right now as a supervisor at South Haven Bronson in the laboratory. So it's challenging when I have to live all the way in Niles, 45-minute drive from here, just to work in a city that I lived here. It's not affordable housing. It's bad that I have to drive here with a little one-year-old just because people do not want to accept this project and go forward with it. I'm in full support because it'll be better. Kids will be able to get to school easier. It won't be that they have to travel all across from South Haven or Culver districts or Waterville just to get to school. That can be challenging with bus drivers, especially in the snow. I believe they do consider pedestrians as well in this project. It's just all about us getting, approval for it and no delays. So, that's all I can see.
Good job. Thank you for your comments. Hey, good job, little guy. All right. Anybody? Come on up. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Michelle Reineck. I'm a registered voter in the city of South Haven. I live at 98 Erie Street, and I am absolutely 100% behind this project. and I hope it can go forward in a reasonable and sensible amount of time.
Thank you for your comments. All right, is there anybody else before we roll on? I see a hand, I didn't see a hand. If not, go. How about a motion to close public hearing? Otherwise, we're going to
We weren't even,
Comment.
What's that?
we weren't even in a public hearing, just comments.
Oh, that's true. We've been doing this so long, I just figured we were.
Yeah.
All right. So, council. We also have, our environmental consultant is here. Would we like to talk to him a little bit? Questions that have come up? I might in a minute, but unless others have other comments first, want to throw out some comments, then I might bring him up and ask him a question or two.
Something might be thought of in a minute.
Mike Dream? Okay. Where's he hiding out there?
Are you looking for Mr. Hawkins?
Yeah. Jeff's out there.
Jeff, would you mind coming up, please?
Where is he? Oh, you're right there. I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Good evening.
Thank you.
So, and please all feel free to chime in here. You're hearing the word environment come up several times here. Can you just, in your experience, can you talk to us about the concept of a phased development and what we should expect from the state? I mean, is this atypical? Is this typical? I mean, again, we've heard concerns about the neighbors. I would not disagree that we've had a pile of dirt that's driving me, quite frankly, nuts as well. But just talk to us about that, and then I guess what we should be thinking about putting in place going forward to make sure that maybe some of the issues and frustrations we've encountered across the street we don't have occur at this site.
Sure. Well, good evening.
Good evening.
From a standpoint of what was previously mentioned by the consultant for the developer and so forth, I have to concur with the process that they mentioned as to the phase one that they're going to be going through, as well as subsequent investigations and so forth that ultimately will occur at that site. So the description that they made with respect to that process, to me, seemed accurate. One of the things, I guess, to take into consideration here, too, is when we look at the current environmental conditions at that property and the need for additional information, which I concur that they'll need additional information to understand the best way to redevelop that property and do it safely and effectively. The interesting thing, I think, from my perspective and experience on sites like this is we have these conversations statewide on similar types of projects that are similarly contaminated. I concur with the conversation that was made about people like to throw the word remediation out there. The site's going to be remediated. In the state of Michigan, years and years ago, we went to a risk-based approach to cleanup in Michigan. So when we look at that, we look at levels that are safe, the risks that are associated with those levels to ensure that they're managed appropriately on a piece of property. That doesn't mean that necessarily contamination is going to be totally removed and we go back to pristine conditions. That would be the great ideal. Unfortunately, it's not typically feasibly possible, both technology-wise as well as cost-wise. In this particular situation, which is a little bit more unique because they are going to use MSHDA and low-income housing tax credits on this particular property, the requirements are pretty stiff from a standpoint of not only the initial phase one that they're going to be required to do. The initial phase one, actually, which has an ASTM standard that we as professionals follow, but MSHDA actually adds another arm's length list of things that they're going to have to inquire about as well, looking at noise. They look at high-pressure gas lines in proximity to the developed site. They look at a whole host of other things that are included in this phase one. Granted, it doesn't do any sampling yet, but that's a requirement that they're going to be needing to submit as part of their application to determine whether or not they get included in this round of funding for the low-income housing tax credits. But that phase one, as we all know right now from the previous investigations that have been done on that property, we know the site is contaminated, and it has things that in soil that are going to have to be addressed to ensure that it's safely used. From experience, I know that the phase two investigation, both soil sampling and likely some groundwater sampling at that location, is going to have to define the limits of that contamination, or at least understand the distribution of those contaminants on that property in relationship to the proposed use. That data is going to be the basis from which a due care plan, remedial action plan, or response activity plan that may or will be required by MSHDA. So MSHDA is going to require the developer to draft a plan that will be submitted to EGLE, and EGLE will have to provide an opinion on that plan. I can pretty much guarantee you, based on my experience on other sites, that whenever we ask EGLE for a written opinion on due care plan, the response or the response activity plan that they will be preparing as part of that, it's an exhaustive process that typically requires many items that are beyond reason, frankly. So even to the point of making sure that whatever they do, they can verify with certainty that the occupants of that property are going to be safe from a standpoint of future development, as well as they're going to have to demonstrate that whatever they indicate they're going to do as part of their development has been implemented, which would be reviewed by EGLE in this particular case. I think a comment was made previously that it's, and probably from one of our other presentations, that in typical due diligence activities and so forth, when a person buys a contaminated property, they have to do their due diligence. If they want liability protection for environmental remediation or cleanup on a property, they have to do a baseline environmental assessment. And by law, they're also then required as an owner of contaminated property to exercise due care. And it's correct. Typically on a lot of properties, when people buy and sell properties, it's their responsibility to implement due care. That's where this project is going to be different. This project is going to be different in the sense that they are still going to be responsible for exercising due care on that property, but they are going to have to get their plan approved from EGLE prior to implementing that plan, and then ultimately demonstrate that that plan has been implemented. So that's a little bit different from that standpoint, because typically on a traditional due diligence project, when we do phase one, phase two, BEA due care, we'll do a documentation of due care, and the law basically says that you have to exercise due care and you have to be able to demonstrate, if EGLE should request that information, to show that you're doing due care. But it's not something that you have to submit for an approval. In this case, you will have to submit for approval.
Anybody, I don't want another question, but go ahead.
Right on that, so you're saying that this is going to be a little bit of a higher standard, but then some people have mentioned that because they're apparently across the street is a developer who's not doing a very nice job with his project. Oversight. There's concern about oversight. What kind of oversight will be on habitat for Overton?
Well, as far as oversight is concerned, in this particular case, I mean, they'll have to demonstrate to EGLE and show them information that they've complied with the activities that they've done. Typically, a response activity plan is submitted prior to the implementation of due care activities, and then once the due care activities are completed, then they have to submit documentation of due care compliance, or a Section 7A compliance analysis, and that would have to be approved as well. So that's going to be something that EGLE would then receive that document, and they're going to say, yes, we concur with what you've done. No, we haven't. I would say also, we understand the situation on the soil pile and those types of issues and so forth, and I know we've been working with staff here of late to require the developer to begin do more on documentation and action from a standpoint of maintaining their responsibilities with respect to that. So I think we understand that concern, and I think it's even a part of the brownfield redevelopment process when we look at doing brownfield plans and so forth, that the onus is going to be put on the developer to provide proof of implementing the things that they're responsible to do from a standpoint of due care. So we have documentation, we know that it's being done, and they're managing it appropriately in a timely fashion going forward.
Are there penalties or other consequences for failing to do so?
Well, sure, Eagle always has fines and penalties with respect to things like that. I haven't seen too many in that regard, but keep in mind that they won't get their financing from MSHDA if they don't get concurrence or approval from Eagle. So I guess you could say that's a fines and penalties in that regard.
Anything else? All right, let's go down the road of the EIS real quickly. This is one I know I struggled with. I know we just had this approved. I did go back through and just kind of look at some of the history, and we had been a ways down the road with the developer when we actually officially signed that document back in July. So that's again on all of us to own that. But I keep kind of coming back to what's the benefit? Is it going to ultimately impact the cleanup? I kind of, it's a little joking aside, but I as I have Pastor Travis, Pastor Joe in here, kind of a divine intervention. I was 3 hours north, and I sit on a chairlift next to somebody and start having a discussion, and he's a geologist. So I had a real nice talk with this fine gentleman about what's an EIS, and just some of the comments that were said just got me thinking. So, and here's what I'm looking for, I guess, further guidance. Because I would never, ever, ever, ever suggest that we move this project forward if I thought it wasn't safe, period. End of story. If I thought the EIS was going to add some extra layer of value, I would do it, but I don't see where it would. So in that regard, I think if this does go forward, I think we should review our purpose of that EIS statement and why we would insert it. Everything that I've read, and again, in talking, it's a lot of what could be. And when I was having part of this discussion was, well, do you have, is this a blank piece of property? Is this kind of, is it nature-like? And I explained, no, it's a contaminated site. And so kind of the question, well, why would you do that on a contaminated site? You already know there's contamination. You already know you have to have a plan. And so, again, just trying to understand, would the EIS change how that site's cleaned up? And I guess ultimately, would it impact public safety? Those are kind of the two that may be loaded, I know, but I'm just curious. I mean, does that change the cleanup plan? Does it change the MSHDA plan? Does it change the EGLE plan?
Well, I would say, I guess, from a standpoint of the addressing contamination on that property and using it safely, the scrutiny from EGLE is going to be more intense than what may come out of an EIS in that regard. That rules the day from a standpoint of what is going to be done on that property and what, the things that need to be done on that location. The engineer was up here talking about the basins and those types of things. I mean, whether they're going to be lined and those types of things are all going to be discussions and activities that are going to be included. Whether a vapor mitigation or vapor barrier is needed, all those types of things would be addressed as part of that due care review and the approval that's going to come from the state.
Okay. So I would argue we need to focus our efforts on making sure that what's getting cleaned up is done properly, and we've got the checks and balances in place to make sure things are being done. I mean, that's fair. Okay.
I mean, I can give you, for instance, we worked on another project, not in this community, where we went through this process. And as part of it, it was in a commercial development, not residential. And we put soil in berms, covered it. We put a barrier. We put 6 inches of soil on top of it. And EGLE required us to survey the top elevation of those mounds. And every 2 years, we have to resurvey them in case they've shrunk. And if they've shrunk, we have to add more soil on top. So, I mean, it's that level of scrutiny that they get into with respect to when they have to approve a documentation due care compliance or a response activity plan as part of this, the level of scrutiny is significant.
Okay. That's what I want to hear. Okay. Any other questions? If not, I will say thank you. So,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay. Other council comments, questions, or shall we call the question?
I've got a comment.
Yep, go ahead.
So I guess I appreciate what the questions that you had on the contamination part of the environmental impact statement, but the environmental impact statement goes beyond just contamination. And I'm having trouble reconciling the statements. On one hand, requiring an EIS would be unfair, burdensome, and expensive. And on the other hand, the information contained in the EIS is readily available. So if a real EIS is that involved, what is it potentially that we are missing? I mean, staff put together an 8-page memo regarding the environmental impact statement in a little over a week. Habitat has known about the environmental impact statement for a month, and I hope that month has not gone to waste. I really do support this project, but and there's a lot of good design in this development, but in my opinion, the waiver of the environmental impact statement for the Overton PUD does not meet the waiver requirements of Section 13043. So I can't support it.
Anybody else? Okay. I guess we're ready to call the question. Ready to go. All right. The question before us is the motion to approve the PUD application and set the public hearing for Monday, March the 21st, 2022 at 7 p.m. Let's go ahead and roll call it.
O'Nuki,
Yes.
Schlack,
No.
Sleeper,
No.
Wilkins,
Yes.
Arnold,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes. So we will have a public hearing Monday, March the 21st at 7 p.m. That takes us to new business. City Council will be asked to consider the following actions regarding the short-term rental program. First, we're going to receive an update on revenues and expenditures. And if folks are sneaking out, thank you for coming. Sorry, I know if somebody wants to go ahead. Sorry, I should have said that. If you're
Did you want me to just start, or you want me to wait for a second?
Oh, wait 30 seconds. Why not? We'll do some jumping jacks real quick.
Figure out what this was. This goes with this packet.
Oh, it's just in there.
Yeah, I think so, because accessory buildings. And that's what this thing is all about. Is
Yep.
Building above your garage or
All
something.
right.
Or one bedroom.
And then why don't we, just for council, if everyone's in agreement, we'll do the update. We'll have ample opportunity for public comment once we get to the resolution, setting the rates and whatnot. So that's fair to everybody. Let's presentation first, then we'll go into the action items.
Okay. Okay, well, I beg your indulgence, and thank you very much. We wanted to give an update on the revenues and expenditures from the totality from the program since its genesis in early 2019. So if you can remember, this was passed, the whole update to the rental ordinance that implemented the two types of business units as well as the fees was implemented at the end of 2018. And then we went into creating the new program at the beginning of 2019.
With that, so we had about a half a year to get into fiscal year 2019 to 2020. And what we wanted to do is look at this program from the very start to the very end and see where we are with revenues and expenditures. As we detailed in the staff report, the revenues were permit driven. So we estimated when we put the Baird report together as how many permits would we need to generate X amount of revenue to substantiate the rental program, because it was driven by council that this wasn't going to be funded as a general fund. We wanted to maybe offset those costs with revenues. And what we found is that for the most part, most years we had a net positive. But clearly in March 2020, which was the end of fiscal year of 1920, we went into the pandemic, and that's where we're seeing some of our very large losses. As it was demonstrated in the staff report, we looked at this based off a couple things. We have brought the expenditures to council before, but they were based on a calendar year. The city, per city charter, we do a fiscal year, so we wanted to tailor what we were presenting to you as, one, consistent with how you do see your revenues and expenditures through your audits, and then two, we wanted to also review as to how staff time was actually being allocated versus the Baird report, which was an estimation on how we were going to use staff time when we were creating the genesis of this program. And over time, we had seen people come, people go, as well as where we were at with the pandemic. So that's how we got to the loss that we're dealing with here. And so we have a net program deficit of 112. And I should state that we believe that it's entirely from the decreasing permits that were being renewed in the 2020 year. Have you seen the chart that we had talked about earlier when we looked at the STR report? There was a sizable dip showing the decreasing number of business permits that really provide a lot of the expenditure, the revenues for this program. Overall, because you can't make money on this, you're supposed to have a generally costs meet revenues. So for the most part, they were slightly above until we got to 2020, and then again slightly above. So we believe that 1920 was an aberration. But knowing that we do have some losses, in talking with City Attorney Curcio, is that we can, and within 3 years or in a 3-year period, try to make up those losses. And so we are suggesting a $100 increase on the business permits and a $25 increase on the personal permits to kind of get us back to a positive. We also have, so I know that I've kind of laid out a lot of information here. Is there any questions on council based on anything I've talked about so far?
I don't have a question, but I am concerned about it taking the 3 years to go back to positive.
I'm sorry?
I'm concerned about how long it will take to recoup those losses, and I don't know if there's any way to shorten that time period by raising the short-term rental fee or something to that regard.
So if I'm hearing you right, you would like to see the recoupment happen in 1 year versus 3 years?
I mean, I feel like that would make sense to me, and probably the people that I represent. Just right now, it feels like the taxpayers are funding this program, and I know, our residents have not wanted to do that. They've wanted it to be self-funding, so that over $100,000 deficit just feels very large, and I would like to try to correct that in a more timely manner, if we can.
So the concern with trying to recoup the costs on a quicker basis is that the fees for any particular year need to be roughly proportionate to the cost of the program. The kind of strange thing here is we have such an anomalous year with the 2019-2020 year that if we just stick that entire deficit on a single year, it would at least be arguable that the ratepayers this particular year are kind of subsidizing past losses, whereas if we spread that out over a longer period of time, and 3 years is just kind of a reasonable number, then those losses are diffused more broadly across different ratepayers in different years and are more less likely to be challenged on the grounds that they're disproportionate. So that's why a phased approach was suggested, as opposed to just an immediate increase to make up the entire deficit in a single year. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And this would be something that would be adjusted if it didn't look like that was going to be covered in the 3 years.
The staff report even references that, it's been about 3 years since these rates have been reviewed and these rates have been looked at to this degree. After the 3 years that it's predicted that deficit will be made up, it's more than likely that those rates would want to be looked at again to determine, are they at an appropriate level, too high, too low, or whatever else may be determined at that point.
It's staff's intention to bring the rates for review in January of next year. We would have our audit done at that time, and we can bring audited numbers and so look at the rates once more. And we were thinking of doing this around the time as we do our STR snapshot. So this would be kind of presented at that time to keep abreast on expenditures and see if increases are needed or decreases are needed.
Okay. Thanks.
The year of the anomaly, some of those expenses, were contracted services that weren't provided.
We have a contract with Shays that's actually being asked to be renewed here tonight, but we have a contract with them that regardless of their actual number of inspections that we have set upon a base number of inspections to be done, which is 575. That was a number that had come up when the first agreement was formulated, and we came up with that because Shays had to add personnel to do this. They did not have an inspector on staff to do this. So we came up with that amount, and the agreement that's being proposed here tonight is the same agreement as what was there. We've just cleaned up what Shays is actually doing versus what we did not know how the program was going to work out then. So we've tailored that agreement. But again, there's no increases in that Shays amount for base number of inspections completed a year.
Right. During the anomaly, we didn't provide as many inspections at a fair assessment.
Because there was pretty much a lockdown in nearly every industry.
Correct.
So we did not do inspections for, I would say, until almost September, October.
But still, there was an incurred cost.
Yes,
So we're still able to charge for that service even though it wasn't written. I just want to make sure from a legal standpoint we're covered.
Yes. I'm sorry, we were still charging, or we were still paying employees that were assigned to that program. And we were also still paying Shays because of our agreements with them. So they were still employed, but we could not actually effectuate the inspections because of certain regulations that were coming down because of the pandemic. So there was people employed, but they couldn't actually do the work that we had employed them for.
Okay. I just want to make sure, I know we've tried to look hard to make sure we're truly putting them in the right buckets, and if they were doing other things during the pandemic, or did we pull, so. Okay. Any other questions? All right. I guess we're going on to the next one. Let me grab to the next one.
Some of the things that we're also looking at is in implementing this program, we've learned a few things. One was we had a number of people who would not show up for their inspections after being scheduled, so that's why we had the implementation of a no-show fee. And also, we have the implementation of a reinspection fee. There are times when reinspection could be just following up with an email, but it also is more appropriate to go out there and ascertain that the fixes were actually done. So we think it would be appropriate to have that reinspection fee since personnel are actually going out there and conducting a reinspection to ensure that the fixes have been done. So those are some tweaks that we had learned over the course of the 3 years so far, and those are what's being promoted or what's being asked for your approval tonight in part of that resolution.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so we've got a couple items to come up. Why don't we do?
Can I ask a quick question about that? Does the $50 no-show fee cover the cost to us for a no-show?
Well, it's going to cover more cost than there wasn't before. Before, we've had a number of people who, staffs out there waiting for someone to come and let them in, and there was nobody there to let them in. It was, we didn't see, or we didn't know we had this, or we just forgot. So this is not meant to completely recoup costs, but this is it's one of two things. It's two things, really. It's to incur good behavior and showing up for your inspection, and we do modify dates and try to work with people who need an inspection or a re-inspection, but this is a further tool in our toolbox to ensure compliance.
City staff has been hearing the feedback both from council and members of the public in regard to the enforcement of the program. The building department specifically has overgone quite a bit of staff turnover in the last 6 months. We have hired both a new code enforcement officer, full-time code enforcement officer, as well as a new code enforcement officer / short-term rental administrator. Later in this report, I know Kate will highlight a little bit about some of the enforcement action that has been taken, but these two items, adding a reinspection fee and a no-show fee, are coming from recommendations from the staff members working in the short-term rental program, who are looking at ways to make sure that they can appropriately enforce that ordinance.
Okay.
Sounds good. Now, ready? Let's go to let's see, B. Council will be asked to consider the approval of Resolution 2022-06, which is a resolution to approve an updated fee schedule for the City of South Haven short-term rental program.
Make a motion to consider the approval of Resolution 2022-06.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Do you want to actually walk through those fee changes?
Absolutely. So we have in our packet the updated fee schedule, and this mirrors a lot of what we heard from our previous discussions on this, but this does include a rental fee, short-term, let me get my resolution right up here, excuse me. So we have a new schedule here that would show $600 per dwelling unit for the business STR, which is an annual registration and inspection fee. For the personal STR permit is a biannual registration and inspection fee that would increase from $100 to $125. We have a re-inspection fee of $100 per re-inspection per dwelling unit, a no-show fee of $50 per missed inspection, and we continue the application to increase maximum occupancy, which is a $500 application fee.
Okay. Questions on those? Nothing? Let's take public questions or comments. Any public questions or comments on this item?
Dan Agnello, 964 Everett Parkway. I noticed in reconciliation of the cost that there were, I think, 4 violations, and they fined them $750. That was just recently, but there was like 14 emails or letters sent out or whatever where there was no fine. And there's also 17 or whatever it is emails sent out that where people had advertised for a short-term rental in South Haven but did not have a license yet. So that's basically the same thing as trying to get it in a short-term rental. Now, there was no fines. Again, I get tired of looking at this ordinance. I talked to Carol when she was the STR administrator. She says, well, I warned them first. I said, Carol, show me in the ordinance where it says you give them a warning. If you penalize these people the first time, we can get some of our money back. If they would have penalized these people already, we would have gotten $20,000 back out of our $100,000 if we just enforced the ordinance. There were, like I said, I think it was a total of 25 or 27 people times $750. That would have been $20,000. We could just recoup that in just a couple months without increasing the fee every couple of years. So I understand we got some more enforcement people, but, and like I said, the enforcement system is not working, because if you call an agency, they will say, okay, I'll go check on it. And 2 agencies, if they say, like, for instance, over occupation, they will make the people leave and they forfeit the rest of their money. But nobody notifies the city. So there's hundreds of infractions. If you have, let's just say you only have 500 STRs and you have 4 rental weeks, That's 20,000 rental days. You mean to tell me you're only having 10, 15, or 20 infractions? No. The reporting system, the agents don't tell the city, and the city doesn't record everything except, all they do is give warnings. They are getting better about doing the enforcement. But again, if we enforce everything that we say we're going to enforce, we'd already had $20,000. We're 1/5 of our way toward our deficit during the COVID time. So I'm just saying we got to enforce it much better. Thank you.
Thank you. Staff, any thoughts, comments, or just want to make sure you had nothing?
I guess one comment we can make to maybe quell some misconception is it's always going to be more costly to operate a code enforcement program than the revenue you're going to bring in from fines associated with the code enforcement program in terms of taking things to court if necessary, taking the staff time, the documentation necessary. That's a public service that's provided. The fees are not. It's always going to cost you more money to operate a code enforcement program than it is going to be offset by those fees.
I would also add that if you notice in here, we have one property that was incorrectly identified as operating illegally within the system by host compliance. Not every system is completely correct, and that's why we have staff to investigate. We have to investigate. We are being very aggressive with code enforcement and very aggressive with the application of this program. And I understand what we've heard so far, and people are very, they're concerned that this isn't being done enough. I can tell you that with we've got new staff, and they've been given a directive to look for bringing people into compliance. The idea here is to make sure that everyone's following the program, and we have tools in our toolbox to make that happen. I've not asked for strict compliance where everyone gets a ticket, but we are trying to be very measured and making sure that we are getting everyone into compliance, or if they're not able to, then they cannot be renting.
And I think the city manager makes a really good comment there that the city's practice in regard to code enforcement is to bring people into compliance. Code enforcement and fines associated with code enforcement, they're not intended to be punitive in nature. It's not a punishment per se. They're incentivizing compliance and bringing people into compliance. And part of that is it takes time because education is involved in those processes. And that's why there does have to be warnings. There does have to be educational opportunities. And then when those steps don't work, or when you have repeat offenders, or when you have folks operating not in good faith, that's when you have those other tools at your disposal to make sure you're bringing people into compliance where appropriate.
Okay, well stated. Anybody else on the updated fee schedule?
John Lorsdorfer, 23 Delaware. I'm also concerned about the process and the cost because it seems like a very expensive cost to run this program. After a person submits their application with a check, where does the application go? How many city employees are involved in reviewing that application? And outside of the cost of the inspections, how much time is devoted to all these applications? Is it all answering phone calls during the summer? Is there a breakdown of how many employees are involved in this and the cost? It just seems to be a very expensive program from the administrative standpoint. Do you have facts and figures and times on that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
We've been tracking. I mean, I don't know if you want to get back with him at a later time. We don't have to answer it tonight, but just on what data you've gathered as far as the
Sure,
cost tracking.
I can. And I should say that how we imagined the program in 2018 is much different than how it is today. As Griffin has mentioned, we have new staff members, and we've really rolled in and become very efficient on what we do have. So we have a code enforcement officer / STR administrator that has really taken on a lot of the duties that would answer your day-to-day questions and handle all that. So we have quite a bit of efficiencies that are built into the system now than what we understood in 2018. But I can follow up with Mr. Lorsdorfer and share that.
Sounds good. Thank you. Appreciate it. Anybody else thought someone else come? Joe, were you coming up? You good? Okay.
Dave Tuttle, 116 Clinton. My recommendation would be that the permit fees should in fact be doubled to $1,000 and $250. And my rationale for that is, just like it was pointed out, we've had a deficit here, a significant deficit, and we need to recoup that, and we need to prevent it from happening again. And so once we have some visibility going forward that we are, in fact, going to be at a break even, then we could reevaluate it. But we need to get back onto a solid footing. As a CFO, I looked at the numbers, and I've got a little bit of concern in that when you look at the trend of the expenses in the first 2 years were approximately, the administrative portion of the expenses were approximately $170,000 and $167,000. Then in the more recent 2 years, it's been $100,000 and $94,000. I take my hat off for reducing the costs by $60,000, $70,000, making the program that much more efficient. But we've also, sounds like we've now hired more people that are participating in this. And so I look at this and I say, wait a minute, if we were losing some significant money previously and we've got fewer rentals because the numbers of rentals earlier on were closer to 470 or something, and we've got like 350 on the business right now, I'm not sure that we're going to continue at the lower expense level, that kind of the run rate, to say our expense is really going to be that much lower, and we don't have the increase in the number of units that would offset that. So I'm a little bit skeptical that we would in fact break even based on a $600 number this year. And I think we should be more aggressive to say, let's go ahead and get the program, make sure that we're in the black. If there's an excess, we can go ahead and potentially use that money for some of the tourism things that we need to do that drive people in and support the community. And then go ahead and, once we have the update at the end of January based on the new numbers, go ahead and reset it to say, here's what we really need to do. But we're taking a big risk as the existing community for this program if we only increase it from 500 to 600 instead of taking a more aggressive approach to say, you know what, these people that are making a lot of money renting out these properties, let's go ahead and have them pay their fair share, and let's get back on a level footing here. So that was my suggestion relative to the rates. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, appreciate it. And I know some of the mention of staff changes was some turnover as well, right? I know we had Carol resigned and just new staff turning over. And,
Correct.
Okay.
At this point, there's still the same amount of FTE assigned to the program as there were, let's say, a year ago at this time. Now, that is a change from when the program started several years ago. As the city manager mentioned, originally the city of South Haven hired a consultant when they were contemplating putting together this inspection program, who helped to make recommendations not only on the initial staffing allocations, but also the initial fees associated with this program. As you can see several different times in this report, since 2018, the city of South Haven has learned from its experience in administering this program and made adjustments as necessary. One of those adjustments is originally there was 1.5 FTE assigned to running the program on a day-to-day basis with support from other administrative positions, zoning administrator, assistant city manager, GIS tech as necessary. That has been downsized based on efficiencies and other things that have been mentioned, where on a day-to-day basis at this point in time, we only have one full-time employee assigned to this program. But again, we feel like we have a really strong team, and we feel like we have people who are able to not only cover the administrative parts of those jobs, but the enforcement side. And particularly with the new individual we have in that role as of the last couple months, we're very excited to have them on board.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it. All right, was there anybody else on this topic?
David Veenstra, 1220 Monroe Boulevard. I was a little surprised to hear that the no-show fee wouldn't cover the full cost. So I'm wondering, if that cost is $75, why wouldn't we make it at least $75? And the other thing I'm wondering about is why we wouldn't. Is there an inherent reason why we can't have this program, the permitting program, be in the black every year? In other words, to have this make some money for South Haven, why not have it bring in some revenue? Is there something about that
can't do that?
Can't be done.
Correct. That would be correct. We are not allowed to. You want to? Yeah.
I mean, we
get in trouble.
To a certain extent, the costs assigned, so the fees associated with the program have to be reasonably proportional to the costs of the program. So some of the statements about, again, why can't we run it, a program for profit, if you will, that could be then used in other parts of the organization, that's not appropriate and could open the city
Get in
up
trouble.
to lots of trouble. Now, there's nothing that says you can't run slightly in the black in some years, as you've seen here. It just has to be reasonably proportional. So again, I guess you could say for programs like this, your goal over time is to break even.
Right.
But in practice, that's not going to happen, That's not going to happen perfectly every year. One year you may be a little bit one way, one year you may be a little bit the other. And that's why, now that we have, let's say, 3 years of data, the more years of data you have to look at this program, the more accurate information council will have to really evaluate how is this program doing in terms of its financial sustainability.
Right. And the difficulty here is we have a relatively small number of years in terms of a sample set of 3, and we have one that we believe might be historically anomalous with the 2019-2020 year. And that's why, again, why we're recommending a kind of phased recouping of this cost, because it's hard to predict going forward what it's going to be year to year. So kind of having this more moderate approach gives us the ability to adjust. If it's not closing the gap as quickly as we think, then we'll go for a bigger increase in the following year. But we don't want to end up suddenly end up with a massive surplus, because again, that does open up the city up to potential liability through suits and things like that.
And part of the challenge with that is not all your costs associated with a program like this are fixed costs. Now, some of them are easy to predict. I mean, when you have set minimums on inspection agreements with SHAES, when you can reasonably predict what your staffing is going to look like, it's why city staff feels like we can pretty reasonably estimate the costs associated with a program like this every year. But there are also your unfixed costs. So costs for enforcement, costs for supplies that may be needed. I mean, there are some costs that you're never going to be able to perfectly predict on a year-to-year basis. Again, the more years of data we have to start to average some of those out and continue to learn from the experience of operating a program like this, everyone will get better. But with the sample size we have at this point, this is where we're at.
Okay. No, that's good. All right. Ms. Mary.
Mary Hasley, 726 North Shore Drive. With regard to the no-show fees, I think they really have to cover the actual costs. I think it's just unacceptable to not cover them, and for the re-inspection also, because those are at the fault of the STR holder. And if you waive that, or if you have it too low, it will not have the deterrence effect it should have. With regard to learning, helping these people learn what the process is, it's backwards. So I am not aware of any license that's granted without having to show some level of competence, that you know how to use the license. And that should be the same for STR license holders. They should know what the rules and regulations are. They should know that there's a late fee. They should know that it has to be posted in the window. They should know they have to register. This education should be upfront. There should not be no-shows. There should not have to be re-inspections. The reasons those happen are because of not knowing what's going on, and that can be avoided if they are properly educated before they even get the license to help do the STR. And with regard to violations, depending on what you're updating, I've said this before and I'll continue to say it, I think agreements need to be updated to require that all individuals who are staying there need to be listed, and that there needs to be a requirement that who's ever responding to them has access. The quid pro quo for the license is the entry upon potential violation. And a resounding question is, of the fees, how many are actually covering the cost? That really is critical and must be done with these fee increases.
Thank you. Anybody else before we move on? Good evening.
Hello, Matt Weber, 215 Superior Street. So as a short-term rental owner myself, I'll start by saying that I fully support the STR owners being responsible for funding the full cost for the city to administer the program. And I know the other STR owners agree with me on that point. The one outlier we keep talking about is 2019, 2020, when it was referenced the pandemic drove a revenue decline of $192,000 from 2018 to 2019 because of the lack of the licenses. But another key element driving that imbalance of expenses versus revenues is the setup costs associated with the STR program. I'd like to reference the meeting minutes from February 4th, 2021, last year, where as a planning commission meeting when STR fees were discussed. And quote, 2019 costs were substantially higher from an administrative standpoint. That just comes with setting up a major program like that, putting together forms, develop filing systems, and simple inspection process, end quote. These were, quote, upfront costs that will not be replicated again, end quote. Therefore, the offending year of 19 and 20 was an anomaly created from a once-in-a-century pandemic and initial costs associated with setting up an STR program. We should not be adjusting the fee structure in perpetuity. I totally agree with for 3 years, let's get it balanced, but not in perpetuity due to a one-year anomaly, especially since the current fee is proving enough to allow the program to remain solvent. But again, we absolutely need to recognize the deficit that currently exists. Fully understand that. I also support having the no-show fee, reinspection fee match whatever the costs are. I do not want this to be an additional expense to the city. We want to be good neighbors. I just want to make sure that when we talk about that deficit, the $176,000 deficit, it's not just the pandemic. There's the other things at play of us setting up an STR program. And so I know there's concerns about this happening again, but we all recognize it's an anomaly. It was a pandemic and the setups for the STR program. So, but I want it to be in the black. I fully support what we're talking about doing to get there. So thank you for the time.
Thanks for your comments. Appreciate it. Anybody else before we vote? All right. We've got a motion. We've got a second. Anybody? Council questions first?
I did have one additional question. So I'm not sure when people pay their annual fee, and if they've already paid their fee for this upcoming season, would they then have to be, would they pay the additional $100 or $25, or would they just get a pass for this year? How would that work?
We have permit holders who renew at different times during the year. That way, there's not one drop dead date for staff to kind of scramble for. So my impression was that once council adopts the resolution, those permit holders from that point on will have to pay the increased amount.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else?
Is there a way to cover the cost of the no-shows and reinspection fees?
If I can, I think if you look a little bit further down in the agreement with Shays, so re-inspections are already at a reduced cost to the city. So where an inspection's $125, a re-inspection is $75. So there was some thought to that when we were coming up with these rates. So $75 to Shays for the cost, plus $25 for administrative time. And then when you're conducting a no-show, you're not actually conducting an inspection, so there's less time and less effort that has to be put into that. So again, to not overstep my role, I think city staff's pretty comfortable that those fees were determined to cover the costs of a reinspection or a no-show.
I would agree with that. And Griffin makes a very good point, which is when the homeowner or the agent doesn't show up, there's actually nothing being conducted, so we don't have their time out there but for them showing up. So the no-show fee is, again, meant to be a tool in the toolbox, but also recoup the time that they were out there.
Right.
But, and he brings up a very good point about the re-inspection fee. Those costs have been contemplated when we proposed these amounts.
Good.
Okay.
Everyone's good?
Sorry, my last question, sorry, I have a lot of questions about this, would be if we get like a year down the road with the $600 fee and someone determines that we're not going to be on pace to recoup those costs within the 3 years that we expect to, would we then go back and tweak it?
City council has the authority that, because we're adopting these fees, or we're proposing these fees by resolution, similarly to what's being done now, they could be reconsidered by city council at a future date.
Okay.
The other thing to add is that per the ordinance, this annual report comes to the council every year around this time of year. So it's easy to look at the numbers at this time each year annually to make sure that things are on pace the way that they were intended to be.
Gotcha.
Ready to go? All right, we have a motion, we have a second to approve Resolution 2022-06, setting the updated fee schedule. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. It is approved. Next, we'll be asked to consider the approval of the updated short-term rental inspection program agreement with the South Haven Area Emergency Services.
I'll make a motion to update the short-term rental inspection program agreement with Shays.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second, and we've got the agreement in front of us. We've got the chief here. I'm sure he wants to come up and tell us all about it. Just kidding. Just enjoy yourself. You're good. Anybody else want to tell us? I mean, it's an updated agreement. Got the rates in there. I mean,
It's an
pretty
updated
straight ahead.
agreement. There's not much that has changed by the amounts, but what we did is try to clarify what the actual duties were and how the program has been functioning. So that's really what's been done here, is that it's another 3-year agreement. The amounts stay the same, but we've clarified the duties.
Okay. Well, we appreciate it, and we appreciate the inspections being done, keeping everybody safe. We got a motion, we got a second. Any public questions on this inspection process? None. Council? None. We have a motion, we have a second to approve the updated short-term rental inspection program. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. It's approved. Next, an update on the enforcement actions taken since February the 7th, 2022. Please.
Well, thank you, sir. As noted in here from Kelly Tungate, we have issued 4 citations, including $750 fines that were issued to properties renting without an active certificate. 1 property has contacted the office to appeal the citation. 1 property is working to come into compliance. 12 warning letters were issued to properties renting without active rental certificates. 1 property was incorrectly identified by Host Compliance, which is our online third-party vendor that does that checks websites for non-compliant STRs. 4 properties are working to come into compliance. 15 emails were sent to properties as being advertised as short-term rentals without active rental certificate. 4 are now in compliance. 4 are working to come into compliance, and 6 are working with an agent to bring them into compliance. And all properties were initially identified using Host Compliance. Host Compliance is our third-party vendor that identifies properties that are being advertised as short-term rentals online. It's a great tool because there's so many different websites. We utilize this vendor to look at them all. Host Compliance uses information provided to them by the city to verify that listings are registered via our program. So what we're seeing here is, like I said, we've had a lot of people retire out of the building department. We've got some new people in there, and they've got the directive to enforce the ordinances that we have adopted. So.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may add, just to add some additional clarification or to reassure City Council, when warning letters or even emails are issued, there are new processes in place at this time that those items are documented. So if we run into either a lack of that individual bringing their property into compliance or repeat offenses, that then gives us more justification and more support for issuing citations or taking additional enforcement action as may be necessary down the road. So just when you see, oh, they issued a warning, that didn't do anything, or what's that actually doing, it's all part of a code enforcement process, if you will, again, with the ultimate goal being working with people to bring people into compliance.
Agreed. Anybody else? Anybody else? Good comments, good questions. Okay. Well, let's go on. City Council will be asked to consider the approval of our proposed housing consulting and services agreement with Flywheel Development Services, LLC.
Make a motion to approve the proposed housing consulting and services agreement with Flywheel Development Services, LLC.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. The public may be wondering why we're consulting with the Flywheelers, but it's not the Flywheelers.
It's not the Flywheelers. We're continuing our association with Brian Kilpatrick, but we had our original agreement under Housing Next. Well, Housing Next mission is to focus on Ottawa, issues of housing in Ottawa, but to work with Brian Kilpatrick, we'll now have to be using him under Flywheel. It's really just a formality here, just making sure that we are billing and have the relationship with the right entity that is helping us with housing, our housing needs.
Okay, sounds good. Any public questions about this?
Mary Hasley, 726 North Shore Drive. I find it extremely ironic that this is on your agenda at this time. I filed a FOIA request for this information on February 15th after seeing Flywheel as a co-company on the January 25th, 2022 memo from Kilpatrick in the February 3rd Planning Commission agenda packet. I'm still waiting for a response on that. The 10-day extension, I think, ended today. It appears that there is no contract for Flywheel, and now I understand why the extension was required. My request arose because of the memo for development trends and patterns on affordable housing for the agenda item. Of more concern is that in the agenda item for the consent agenda for September 20th, 2021 for this City Council, there was an authorized payment to Flywheel Community Development Services in the amount of $2,737.50. I have a copy if you need it. And I just found it quite ironic that, and more perplexed than anything else, that the city is authorizing a payment to a company for which we don't have a contract. Even more concerning is that I found no payment history for Housing Next. I'm not sure how Mr. Kilpatrick's being paid for all the work he's done for Overton. I am disturbed by all of this. I object to this agreement being retroactive in any aspect. It's completely inappropriate. It's most disturbing that an unauthored staff report stated that the Flywheel was recently formed. In my FOIA request, I provided information with regard to the history of it, and it actually was incorporated in February 2021, so that's over a year ago. I saw that Mr. Kilpatrick recently changed his LinkedIn profile to indicate Flywheel existed since only September 2021, and ironically, that coincides with the almost $3,000 payment from the city to that company. But I think we can all agree that recently would not apply to a company more than 1 year ago, especially if you look up definitions. I won't bore you, but it's just not correct. And I oppose working with Mr. Kilpatrick. We heard about the divergence of the community, and I think he is some of that problem. We talk about needing middle-income housing. Well, in May 2021, in a WZZM 13 news article for a project in Holland used for workforce housing, Mr. Kilpatrick was quoted or identified as the source as saying, the project in Holland Township is what Housing Next calls a great example of high-quality workforce housing. He also is quoted as saying, the more middle-class households we have and the less middle-class housing we have, the more competition drives up price. Allowing those rental properties to exist is really important to the long-term economic sustainability. So in our own case, where he has been helping with Overton for middle income and workforce, that relates to income for people earning $17 to $24 an hour, and that just does, and that with the MSHA charge is consistent between Ottawa and Van Buren counties. They're similar. And so in light of all these anomalies, I really do not support continuing this, continuing work with Mr. Kilpatrick through this contract, and I look forward to the response to my FOIA request. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Council comments? Nothing yet? No? Okay. So far, I guess I would just comment that the work so far away have found very beneficial the information we've received from him. So I'll just add that in. So we have a motion, we have a second to approve the proposed housing consulting services agreement. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, next, City Council be asked to approve the City Council annual priorities for fiscal year 2022 and 2023, July 1, 2022 to July 30, 2023.
I make a motion to approve the City Council annual priorities for fiscal year 2022 to 2023, July 1st, 2022 to July 30th, 2023.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion, we've got a second. You want to take them, comments first? You want us to? put
It's
them
up to you, Mayor. I know that we had our workshop session on Monday, and I worked very hard to get these compiled because I know we had some really good suggestions that came out of that. We also ranked your stickers, and so we're looking at housing development being the number one priority of this council. Review of our short-term rentals and the review of the data and the impact on the community is number 2. Priority number 3 is the organizational improvement, so continuing on with our codification projects. As I've mentioned in our workshop, we believe that the codification of the Code of Ordinances will be done before fiscal year that we're currently in, and we would like to continue the zoning ordinance recodification in the next fiscal year. And we'd also like to work on the enforcement of adopted ordinances with regular reports to council summarizing our activities there. Economic development is priority number 4, there's a number of lists, number of items here. Some of note that came out of that was the participation of the PCAP, or the Citizens Advisory Committee, working to mitigate the economic impacts of the Palisades nuclear plant closure, as well as the development of, the All Seasons Marina and our waterfront areas. Fiscal stewardship and sustainability is priority number 5. And there's some number of items there to explore for fiscal responsibility. Number 6 was future planning, management, and conservation of natural resources. Again, this was a suggestion that came out of our workshop planning. Number 7 is diversity, equity, inclusion, so continuing those efforts. Also, I did want to let you know that we do believe that we'll have our proposals here shortly about our DEI assessment in the next couple meetings. And then priority number 8 is infrastructure. As we all know, that's one of the critical things that city staff have to do is work on our infrastructure plan. That's pavements, that's sidewalks, that's water, sewer, and your electric line. So providing those infrastructure pieces.
All right. Any council questions, comments?
I have a question about priority number 2, the short-term rentals. I thought we agreed to review the short-term rental in its entirety as far as the ordinance.
I think that. Sorry, I'll pull it up.
Because we don't have density, we don't have the total number of short-term rentals, we don't have the pass-on of the license.
Yeah, I
the
guess
homeless sold.
my assumption is under that second bullet, that's kind of assumed.
Yeah. Would that cover the density?
We're going to compiling data, evaluate the impacts, and I'm assuming where that comes, dealing with the implications. So I think we're looking to get into it. So
Can we add on there review of the ordinance pertaining to the findings of those things?
I think that would be natural.
What was that?
Implied?
Yeah, I guess I feel like it's implied.
If we're going to compile the data, it's going to involve a change if we see fit that it needs to change.
Yeah, I guess I just assume it's implied as well.
Is it problematic to add it then, just to be clear? Because just what I'm hearing from people in my ward and outside of my ward is that they really want us to look at this and the impact that it's having, but then they also want us to be able to go back and review and amend the ordinance if we need to, depending on what the findings are. And because that piece isn't explicitly said on there, it just seems like we could get the data, but then not do anything with it.
Thanks.
So I'd rather have it spelled out.
Come back.
I'm not so sure that it would need to be spelled out in a priority, but I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
So we got that. That would be, we just need a motion to that effect. And then I guess I'm going to throw out mine that we talked about as well.
Yeah.
We had a discussion about kind of what we just said, possibly for now and forevermore, looking at the way the goals are set up and listing essential government services kind of first and at the top, so that we always, the reality is they're our largest expenditure. We have to do them, like, so safe drinking water, I mean, just list those, water, wastewater, electric, streets, and they just sit at the top every time. Everything else sits below them because that's essential government. So we had that discussion. I don't know if there's any, if we're looking at a modification.
Yeah, that was kind of my comment as well, is that I remember we had the discussion about there's certain things that's expected from a city government, like making sure the roads are pretty good and making sure the lights come on and making sure we have good water. And I thought we were going to make that always be at the top, always be number one, and we have it at 8. I mean, we're going to work on all of these, but
Well, we will work on all of these, but I guess when I gave you your stickers to go and vote, I didn't kind of say these ones will always be ranked top. So I was trying to really show where your votes had fallen. But I think for next year, or if you'd like me to reallocate these, it's just a little hard because I don't have all your stickers anymore. Once we look at those, they kind of get recycled. So I guess I'm looking for some guidance here. What would you like to do? And if you'd like more data or, something added on here, I've got my red pen. If you can make a motion and you all vote on it, I'd love to put it in here so I can bring them back for approval.
Yeah. And I guess, again, my whole point is there's essential, and then there's what we would rank as priorities every year. The essential is, I don't think next year we're going to not deal with water. We're not going to deal with electric. So I think it's just important. As the public looks at this year over year, they go, oh, okay. We know they're going to be working on those 4 to 5 things. I know customer service fell off years ago because we said, well, we just do it. Whether or not that's a 5th item, that would be up to this group. But I would say at a minimum, we should list those core government functions so that I just don't want everyone to think that safe drinking water is not way, 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 way at the top of our list. And we are going to spend more money on that than all these other priorities combined. So they might as well stay up top. So I don't think it's really anything other than just shuffling.
Well, the one question I have on that is we can say in a priority that we want safe drinking water, but there's such a wide range of what that means. I mean, we could do just the bare minimum, or we could really make that a priority and really be aggressive at addressing safe drinking water. Same with electric reliability, and we can just repair things, or we can really look long-term and make it a priority and really invest in electrical infrastructure. So I agree that we have to always do that. That's like the base, but I'm not sure that it would be clear enough from a priority standpoint to just have that up there. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Yeah, for me, my point is just that they're always going to be on there. And that for me, I feel like it's just making sure the public's clear that these are the main functions of government. All this other stuff is nice to have, but this is our need to have. That's all. So I guess I would always sit it at the top. I feel like it's often a confusing item that I think people don't necessarily know the core functions. I feel like they should always be on there, and I would always sit them just up there, throwing it out.
And remember that this is just like the first step to the budget process, where you actually kind of put the money where your mouth is, and you can then allocate resources to what you consider your top priorities. So,
Which is, again, I would say, year over year, infrastructure will always win over all these other priorities combined, bar none. So, but again, just throwing it out there for clarification, public education. So if we're going to modify it, I would just throw it out there. If we'd like to see it, just add it to a motion. Mr. Schlag? That was a deep
I got
sigh.
nothing.
Yeah, that was like.
Shoot. Are you going to fill it with
Got
something?
nothing.
Is there a motion of any sort? We have one motion. I guess I need a secondary motion, and then we'll go from there. Otherwise, I'll call the question.
Yeah, Wendy, did you want to make a motion for short-term rentals?
Yeah.
I don't remember how you wanted to word it.
That's a good question. Yeah, I would make a motion to amend priority 2 short-term rentals to include
A review of our.
A review of the ordinance
That's entirety.
after,
Entirety.
what's that?
The
Oh, in its
entirety.
entirety,
After we get our
after the
data.
findings are collected.
Good.
Second.
Thanks.
We got a motion, we got a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, no.
No.
One no, okay. Any other modifications, changes we want to make? All right, original question. We have a motion second to approve the adopted priorities.
Do we need to get any?
What's that?
Public comment?
Oh, public comment. Yes, public comment. Any public comment on these priorities? Sorry. Thank you. We've stunned them into silence. Seeing none. We have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. All right, well, that's.
As tired as we are.
Where are we at? Oh, Bill, you're still awake? Oh, good man. Our esteemed DPW Director, Bill Hunter, were you back in time for that windstorm? Or were you still traveling?
No, I was coming, no, I wasn't back in time for the storm, but I was traveling when the snow was coming, so that
Oh,
was
nice. Well,
4
welcome
o'clock in the
back.
morning. That's a fun time.
Welcome back. We had some wind, so.
Oh, yeah.
An update from our esteemed DPW Director.
Thank you,
Mr.
Your
Hunter.
Honor. City Council. This is a list of projects that DPW is currently working on. Concrete standpipe replacement, working on a finance plan with Baird and Company. Our distribution system materials inventory, or DSMI, that's required actually from changes to the Safe Water Drinking Act. This requires a 4-point verification, now equals requiring a 4-point verification to verify our DSMI. So we got to actually pothole down to the road, factor down to the curb stop, upstream, downstream, then plus also verify what's coming in through the basement. That's due actually by January 1 of 2025. New substation project that is currently underway, under design. We actually are going out for bids for the switches for that project. So, and we also are working with a consultant on easement for that project. Cross-connection inspections, this is something I always put on there because Shaw's has a continuing contract with HydroCorp to perform these inspections. These inspections are required through the Safe Water Drinking Act. It does require a site inspection or testing of the backfill assemblies. A lot of confusion you get is people associate the site inspection with testing of the assemblies. Testing of the assemblies is going to happen yearly. So that's what a lot of people get confused on when I get calls from them. AMI project that is currently still underway. We have both the base antennas in. We're waiting on meters. Hopefully, we're going to have that installed by the complete meter change out and installed by 2022. AMI project, it allows us actually to read everything through 2 base antennas. Means we're going to be able to get hourly reads. This will allow in the future for us to be able to look at different rates. For example, day of use rates, something we can't do, but we can do when the AMI project is completed. Aylworth non-motorized path, we were awarded through a CMAQ grant, a pathway on Aylworth from Kalamazoo to LaGrange. We were awarded actually $134,783, and we are agreeing actually to pay $180,217 for a total of $315,000. Currently under design and should be completed the summer of 2022. Water Street planting plan, we are currently seeking proposals for that. That is actually the hillside that's right next to the stairs on Water Street. DPW budget, we do have the draft in to finance for review. Kids Corner Phase 2, we were awarded a grant, $275,000. City will match another $275,000. We have an open house March 10th at City Hall to receive public input on that. Confined space training, we're doing confined space training with staff and also the purchase of new equipment and gas detectors and monitoring. We also implemented actually a confined space policy. Trench box safety purchase, we are actually purchasing our first trench box, and we're actually going to be doing training with staff on that as well. Cost of service study, Shasta just completed a workshop with our consultant on that, and staff is working on a rate recommendation to the board. The Blueberry Tank Vault project, we have a contract, or Shasta is under contract with Allied Mechanical Services for this valve. This valve is, it's going to cost $151,000. What this valve does, it allows for you to fill the tank up into the overflow, and then it'll stop the overflow, but it'll allow you to pressurize from the low to the high, which currently we can't do right now. The DPW building, we have a locker room. We have actually we're doing a design for the locker room at the DPW building. Current DPW locker room is only one gender. So we're actually going to do improvements to allow for both genders in not the same locker room, of course, but a redesign. Art Center roof replacement. The Art Center was granted through the Makaka grant, $38,000, and the total project for that is $75,000. Splash donor pad plaque, that should be installed by the spring of this year. The ARPA funds through Van Buren County, we're requesting $480,468.75. Of course, City Council matched $160, and so did South Haven Township, Casco Township. And I have one more meeting, that'll be tomorrow at 4 o'clock, and to try to get those funds. What those funds will allow us to do is offset, actually. We're currently looking at $15.9 million, but that's going to go up, and that's based on 2,000 services that we suspect we have right now. Some of the challenges that we're experiencing, and I was just having a meeting with Mike about this, is contractor availability. We're also seeing right now that we have projects that we want to do, that it looks like we actually might have to move out to next year. And for example, we're looking at our street resurfacing. So it's contractor availability. You have all these people, all these municipalities that are, we only have so many contractors, and there's just not enough around. So you have these mandates about lead services. Now we have, if it happens, the infrastructure bill, if that happens, I can't imagine what a struggle that's going to be to find contractors. I can imagine us sitting on lack of a better term, a pile of money, but not have the contractors to actually, or to have the larger increased prices because of it. So when I make reference to 15.9 million, I do fear it's going to be a lot higher than that. Oversized downtown parking, educational signage. We're working on educational signs for the downtown. What it'll do is just remind people that our current ordinance says you have to be within the stalls. And what we want to do is put the signs out at the angle parking and put tax at the end of it, which will designate actually you're supposed to be within that area. It's in our existing ordinance. So what's it's going to be a challenge is if, and I have it, I have a Dodge 2500. I don't think I'm going to be able to park in the angle parking, but I can park in the parallel parking, which would be fine. 12th Avenue parking substation with AEP, we do have a draft agreement in with them, and we're waiting for feedback from them on that. Wastewater treatment plant boiler replacement. We've had the boiler, had a couple of emergency repairs on that, and that boiler is the original back to the 1930s. It's an important part of our process, and we're probably going to have to replace that. It looks at about a $250,000. Wastewater treatment plant flood mitigation. We are currently trying to submit for grant funding for that. The proximity for that project, or the amount, is $800,000. We have currently out on the street right now RFP for the air handling units here at City Hall, the original ones, and hopefully we'll get some qualified contractors in the bid on that. And we've had quite a few responses on that already. Beach leveling, we opened up bids, read aloud, and the bids came in for both North and South Beach, $10,000 combined less. Staff's been working to dig out the HESCO barriers, and looks like we're going to be removing those just based on lake elevations at this time. And the pier railing and the gate, good news, actually, the gates came in a lot less than what we were estimated. We had the city council 25,000. We're looking at 15. So we're going to be proceeding with that. As the mayor led in with this, we did have a power outage, a very large, substantial one, yesterday from 5 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. The duration of that, of course, was 15 and a half hours. That was due actually to a pine tree due to the windstorm coming in, just falling within a three-phase. And it took 15 and a half hours, nine staff members to get that up and going. Plus, we had a couple of other smaller ones we had to do it with the repair at that time. City Council have any questions on any of the projects I listed or anything else DPW related?
Any questions, any comments?
When do you expect the green barriers to be fully removed?
It's been right now, of course, by the time the beach opens, yes, that'll be removed. Just as staff's been going in as we have available time just to dig them out and then have them ready. We actually have a beam. What we're trying to do is lift them up. There was a beam that was, or we seen it actually, YouTube videos, see how we could lift them up. We're trying to save them as we can, but I fear actually we're probably going to lose about 50% of the HESCOs. They're not really designed, we'll try to do the best we can, but they are kind of a...
Single use.
They are.
Yeah.
I had one more thing.
It's anticipated that we will have them out this spring, so we're looking in March and April for removal time.
Awesome. Just a little thing about Kids Corner. My daughters wanted me to let you know that the tire swing is broken.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I'll get a work order put on that.
Great.
Thank you, Wendy.
Good job, good job.
Thank you.
Just thank your staff for being out there. Somehow when I leave town, the power goes out because I didn't have, I was driving for 7 hours yesterday and I didn't miss my power for a second. So it's, maybe just, I'll call you when I'm leaving town, you can staff up. So, but no, appreciate their getting everything taken care of. So thank you very much for everything.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Well, let's roll on. Where are we at here? Da-da-da. Oh, citizens in the audience will be heard on items not on the agenda. So if you'd like to speak on something other than, let's see, no Overton and no Reynolds. There you go.
Nope,
Come on up.
neither one. Old white bitches, Karens, racists, these are but a few of the Facebook posts, along with cartoons and screenshots of residents from council meetings that have been appearing on a South Haven Facebook page. Unfortunately, social media has become a cesspool where spineless name-callers hinder any productive dialogue from concerned citizens who actually take the time to do research and appear at public meetings. Sadly, I have learned that one of the administrators of this site lives in my ward. I'm requesting that the City Council amend requirements that speakers give their name and address and that video cameras record only the front of the room and not the face of public commenters. While this requirement might have seemed innocuous when it was first adopted, in our current climate, that is no longer the case. Being targeted through social media is not only uncomfortable, but also potentially dangerous. The goal of citizens regarding Overton has been to make certain that affordable housing is safe and meets the requirements for a quality development. We don't want to see past mistakes repeated. I recognize that the City Council has no authority to monitor any social media site, but they can take measures to ensure the safety of the public that they invite to speak at their meetings. I urge you to amend the current requirements of public comment at all meetings. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Good evening. My name is Walt Placotti. I'm a registered voter in the city of South Haven. I live at 559 Monroe Boulevard. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight to thank you for listening to your constituents and placing STRs on your priority list. I have no intention of taking up your valuable time at every meeting, but I think our message bears repeating just one more time. I'm the face behind the neighborhoods need neighbors signs popping up around town. First off, let me tell you who we are. We're the resident voters of South Haven who feel that their voices have not been heard. Every year, council receives a quantitative report on STRs. I'd like to give you a boots-on-the-ground qualitative report from the residents of South Haven. About 6 months ago, I started to pay attention to Wendy's run for council. Her campaign was largely based on one topic: the proliferation of short-term rentals in our residential neighborhoods and the unintended negative effects on all aspects of the social fabric of our community. Her election by a 2-to-1 margin made me realize that she and I were not the only residents concerned with STRs. So I spoke with her, our thoughts were in alignment, and she allowed me to use her logo as the basis of our movement. So if those were the results in Ward 2, how would the rest of South Haven feel about the effects of short-term rentals in their neighborhoods? I gathered some like-minded individuals, created a great core team, got some signs printed up, and started knocking on doors. From the registered voters list of South Haven, out of 150 doors knocked on, 146 requested signs before I could finish my 2-minute elevator speech. The short answer is yes. Let me tell you briefly how we fit in with all the other towns up and down the coast and in the state. We have more STRs than any other city on the west coast of Lake Michigan. We have the highest STR to home ratio of any town along the coast of Michigan. We far exceed the norm. South Haven has had many studies done by people much smarter than I that our city is in a slow downward spiral with this imbalance. Many of those predictions can now be backed up by published statistical data that are coming true every day. The biggest one is the decline in our population and the problems in our schools. That brings us up to today. Right around the 1st of April, all resident voters of South Haven will receive a postcard that looks just like the signs you see behind you. On the back will be a QR code, a web address, a P.O. box number, and even a neighborhood phone number for help filling out the survey. We even have paper versions if needed. 6 questions on the quality of your life in your neighborhood. And room for a comment. We will then come to you with the results. We hope council will act according to the wishes of the residents. We know council's busy with many important priorities. Neighborhoods Needs Neighbors believe it is a priority, and we will use every tool to move forward and transition into a more formal group to begin the initiative process. Who could not possibly want what the residents of South Haven want? I thank you for your time and consideration.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it. Have a good night. Is there anybody else?
Lisa Beck, 879 Monroe Boulevard. I just wanted to respond to some of the things that I heard in the meeting today. I really resent people assuming what motivates me. I find it extremely divisive. I think it's inappropriate and uncalled for. People don't know me, and I don't like that I feel strongly about something and we don't agree on it necessarily. We agree that we need affordable housing. I think it has to be on safe property. I think it has to be done right. I initially wanted it for families. I still do want it for families more than having to move if you want a child. I've said all that, but I really resent there being any kind of economic or other motivation. I've lived in South Haven, not as a resident because my sister died of breast cancer and had 3 kids that needed taken care of. My husband is a resident. I lived on Indiana since 1994. We moved to our current location about 20 years ago. If anyone thinks it's economic, they can come to my house, as many people already have. Hopefully, I share the problem with contractors. We will get it sided at some point. But I very, very much think it's very bad for South Haven and bad for the residents here to put it on any basis other than We need affordable housing. We disagree perhaps on how to get there, but we all agree we need to get there. And so anyone assuming what motivates me is wrong.
Thank you for your comments. Was there anybody else before we?
Mary Hasley, 726 North Shore Drive. The city's already heard tonight about the verbal attacks on Facebook, and I ask that the city admonish such actions as they have done on other situations, and toward that end, and based on comments from Mayor Smith and city manager, I ask that the city council pass a resolution that residents not be required to say addresses and that shots not be taken of our face, and that limited minutes on this topic are provided. It appears from review of the OMA resolution, the city council can do this at your own volition. I thank Mayor Smith for saying that he would be reviewing this with staff to figure out a way to protect our privacy when speaking on our facts. Toward that end, with resolution, on a happier note, I hope, I ask the city council to resolve the issue with the Fruit Street food truck pending application. There were several people who came to the city council that resulted in the code being sent to the planning commission last year. Several items to review that has brought the process to a slow crawl. This is not against the planning commission, it's just there's a lot to consider, and so they're taking the time to make the right decision, for which I thank them. But meanwhile, Fruit Street food truck is stuck in idle. In the neighborhood, with the neighborhood who wants it, what can Monique do to get her pending application approved? It seems like a resolution might be a path forward more quickly before weeds grow over and consume her truck. I want to also make sure you are aware of improper cutting of trees at Newcomb Beach. This was brought to Bill Hunter's attention today. It was on the easement and I believe also possibly private property. And it's understood that the city did not authorize this. The city was asked earlier today to report it to the police. I hope that was done or will be done shortly. I know everyone's busy. I request that I be kept informed, and a reward is being considered. A $100 reward has been suggested, and I am a year-round resident, and I'm happy to help coordinate this for finding any perpetrator or perpetrators who did this and hold them accountable. We cannot tolerate such disrespectful actions. I also want to end with some accolades, so I thank our beloved Shays for all the great work that they do. As discussed earlier by Chief Hintz, I can attest from personal experience, unfortunately, of how great they are, following a freaky fall in 2018 on the Calhaven Trail. All I can say is wear your helmet. You never know when something bad is going to happen when you're biking. And also, I would like to thank Bill Hunter. I had noticed a sign that was in the middle of the sidewalk for a right turn only at, I think it's Water Street and Dykeman. The plow couldn't get through. Anyone in a wheelchair would not have been able to get through. It was difficult to walk. In fact, we walked in the road, in the right-hand turn lane only. After a simple email, Bill got it taken care of. The sign was cut down. It's much more user-friendly, and it is no longer impeding the accessibility of anyone on that street, and I thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Appreciate it. Anybody else?
Hi, my name is Joey Andrews. I'm a candidate for the 38th State House District, the new one that runs from Saugatuck down to New Buffalo. I'll keep my introduction to you brief because I'm sure we would all love to get home. I have a knack for picking the shortest meetings of the year, I swear. I am currently an attorney and policy analyst for the Michigan AFL-CIO, where we work on local municipal policies, often to address many of the issues that I heard in the room tonight, protecting residents against development and making sure development benefits the citizens. The policies that we're hoping to affect in the state legislature this coming year involve, again, many of the issues that I heard in this room tonight that affect all of our coastal communities, things like the rising water levels that are not only causing lakeshore erosion, but also flooding basements, flooding streets, backed up sewer systems. The higher water table is kind of wreaking havoc, I think, all across our coast. The short-term rental crisis, which is, of course, driving up housing, making affordable housing its own crisis contained within. We, of course, want to see local control maintained of short-term rentals so that each community can decide what's best for itself, but also to expand the tools in the toolbox available to our local communities so that they can more effectively manage this issue that has spread widely, as was mentioned earlier. And then finally, creating a more sustainable local economy. We all deal with the tourism economy on the coast here. I live in St. Joe myself. My family's been here for 5 generations. We've kind of seen the changes that have happened in Southwest Michigan, and I would like to see the trades come back more extensively. I think giving good union jobs to kids getting out of high school is a great way to build the middle class, help people build families, and reinvest in their local communities. So I look forward to getting a chance to meet and talk with each of you, hopefully in time, and look forward to being a partner with you in Lansing. Thank you so much, and have a good evening.
Thanks for sticking around till 10:30.
Hello again. Matt Weber, 215 Superior Street. I wasn't planning on coming back up and talking again about short-term rentals, but there have been some comments like it being called a crisis, so I think it's only right that I also continue to share my perspective on it.
Actually, we've been down this road. We really don't.
This is the point where we're
This
talking
is
about things not.
on the agenda, so we don't want to talk about rentals anymore tonight. Not that we don't want to talk about them, but we've already been there.
I understand that, but we did allow other people to make comments, like Walt
Just-
came up here and spoke for 5 minutes about passing out signs and having a
He was
survey.
discussing his
survey.
his survey, a whole different concept. So if you want to make a brief comment or two, but we're going to keep it brief because we've already been through the rental topic.
Okay, well, I mean, there's a lot of points that are being raised about short-term rentals that are just not true. They're just factually not true. And the survey that we're going to be conducting as a city, let's allow the survey to tell the truth. I just hope that it's not biased. Let's allow the survey conducted, I'm sure, by a third party to actually understand what the impact is of the short-term rentals on the community. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, anybody else before we go home tonight? Oh, shoot. All right, let's do city manager comments.
Well, thank you. I'll keep this brief. We have the Citizens Advisory Committee, or panel rather, that will be meeting March 9th, so Wednesday night. It's from 6 to whenever. They're planning on having the National Regulatory Commission come in and giving an update as to the decommissioning process. So that'll be at Lake Michigan College, as I said, at 6 p.m. on Wednesday night. Also Wednesday, we do have the veterans meeting with Veteran Services of Van Buren County at Senior Services. That'll be 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. March 10th this week, so that's Thursday, we have an open house in this room at 6 p.m. to get feedback on the design for Kids Corner Park. If you'd like to see anything or come and vote, please come to that open house. George kind of touched on it briefly. This is the beginning of our budget process by setting these priorities. We'll be bringing a number of things, including our CIP, our capital improvements plan, and other items to council for the next upcoming months as we get to adoption in May before June. So those are my comments, and I do appreciate all the comments we've heard here tonight. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. All right, council comments. I'll start to the right. George.
I appreciate everyone coming tonight and giving us your comments on all the different topics that we have. Just briefly on Overton, the city has been involved very heavily in Overton, and I think that's one of the reasons I feel very strongly that we need to be very careful about following the rules when it comes to this, because the city has been greatly involved in this. That's all I have.
I'll just say really quick that it was so nice to see a full house here. I love that kind of community involvement and people speaking their minds. So it felt really nice.
Yep, my comment is similar. Thanks for everyone that came out. Thanks for everyone that shared their thoughts. We did get, I got 6 or 8 emails today. They came in so fast and so late in the day, I didn't get a chance to respond, but I did read all the emails that I got today. So thanks for the emails as well. That's my comment.
Just want to explain my vote on the priorities, my no vote to the amendment that Wendy made. I wasn't voting against what her amendment was. I was voting against the procedure that we took. I believe that the priority session that we took and the way it was worded is what people voted on, and I don't think this should have been up for debate to change it in any way because it was voted for in a priority. If things were worded different, people may have voted different in that meeting. So I don't disagree with what you're saying. I'm just disagreeing with that procedure part of it. Secondly, I would respectfully ask that you excuse me from the next meeting. I wished I could be there, but I have a prior commitment that I'm going to be out of town at the next meeting. So I wish I respectfully ask to be excused from the next meeting, City Council. That's all I have. Thank you.
Very good.
No comment.
All right, very good. I'll just ditto, thanks everybody for coming. Again, Bill, thanks to your staff for being out there all hours of the day, every day of the week, so we can be safe. And as Kate said, Thursday evening, 6 to 8, open house for the Kids Corner. So, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're gone. Good night.